Okay, people, welcome to CAT 2021 Slot 1 VARC section. The video will go on for long, so if you have the stamina, एक ही sitting में बैठ के सारा काम होना है, बैठे रहना, कोई कटना मत. Okay, first passage about cuttlefish. Cuttlefish are full of personality, as behavioral ecologist Alexandra Schnell found out while researching the cephalopods' potential to display self-control. Self-control is thought to be the cornerstone of intelligence, as it is an important prerequisite for complex decision-making and planning for future, says Schnell. Okay. पहले पैरा के अंदर, within the first paragraph, all they've done is cuttlefish are full of personality, without necessarily giving us proof or experiment or anything. A generic statement has been made. Most likely the passage is going to discuss how they are making this generic statement in the first place. Now, within this paragraph, there is also this word: while researching the cephalopod's potential to display self-control. Now, if you know what cephalopod means, wonderful. If you don't know what cephalopod means, still okay. Hopefully, we can get to the reference. They're talking of cuttlefish here. This is another way of referring to cuttlefish. Yes, at least this sideways reference of cuttlefish, that is understandable to us. Okay. Now, within this paragraph, they are also going full of personality. शुरुआत में this line was there without any backup to it. Later on, they went on to say, with the potential to display self-control. Potential. So self-control. Basically, what they're linking right now is, if you display self-control, you would have personality. That sort of assertion or sideways statement is being made. Self-control is thought to be the cornerstone of intelligence, as it is an important prerequisite for complex decision-making. Okay. If you have self-control is an important component of intelligence because it is a prerequisite for complex decision-making. So, complex decision-making requires intelligence, and for complex decision-making, self-control is a prerequisite. It is a necessary requirement for it. So on and so forth. अच्छा, अब फन चीज, चाहो तो हर पैराग्राफ इतना डिटेल में बातचीत कर सकते जनता. हर पैराग्राफ के बारे में 3 लाइनें ही थी, इसके बारे में अभी इतना डिटेल बोल दिया. इससे ज्यादा डिटेल में इसके बारे में बातचीत कर सकते, बट दैट वुडंट बी आइडियल. क्योंकि उतना डिटेल में हम एग्जाम के अंदर तो नहीं खेलने वाले. एग्जाम के अंदर तो हम ऊपर ऊपर से चलेंगे. तो अब हम सब ये वाला मस्त काम चला दिया है, वो अब आगे का काम कर रहे हैं, मोटा मोटा कहानी बता रहे हैं. व्हाट ऑल रीडिंग वाइज, क्योंकि रीडिंग वाइज स्टिल गेटिंग टू द इनसाइट कि सेफेलोपॉड हाँ किसी तरह से कटलफिश को रेफर कर रहा होगा, ये आना चाहिए. और उसके बाद सेल्फ कंट्रोल दिखाने की बात है. सेल्फ कंट्रोल इंटेलिजेंस के लिए चाहिए. सेल्फ कंट्रोल इज अ प्री रेक्विजिट फॉर कॉम्प्लेक्स डिसीजन मेकिंग. इतना बोला, आगे बढ़ गए बस. नेक्स्ट, Schnell's study used a modified version of the Marshmallow Test. कुछ मार्शमेलो टेस्ट है, स्नेल की स्टडी. मेथड का डिस्क्रिप्शन दे दिया या नाम बता दिया. इनफैक्ट ऐसे करते हैं. ड्यूरिंग द ओरिजिनल मार्शमेलो टेस्ट, साइकोलॉजिस्ट वॉल्टर मिशेल presented children between age 4 and 6 with one marshmallow. He told them if they waited 15 minutes and didn't eat it, he would give them a second marshmallow. A long-term follow-up study showed that children who waited for the second marshmallow had more success in life. Okay. तो हम बस इतना बोल रहे हैं. I would refer to this as the marshmallow experiment was, if you delay gratification, children delaying gratification points to a more successful future, indicates a potential more successful future. ये था मार्शमेलो एक्सपेरिमेंट. अब उसके डिटेल्स थे. मार्शमेलो दिया, 15 मिनट तक मत खाओ, ठीक है, देखी जाएगी. नेक्स्ट, The cuttlefish version of the experiment looked a lot different. The researchers worked with 6 cuttlefish under 9 months and presented them with seafood instead of sweets. Okay. इससे एक और चीज मेरे को समझ में आई, when they are going on to say instead of sweets, most likely marshmallow. If you don't know what marshmallows are, marshmallow would have been sweet, तभी ये distinction भी किया है. Preliminary experiment showed that cuttlefish's favorite food is live grass shrimp, while red raw prawns are so-so and Asian shore crab is nearly unacceptable. तो अब इसको हम रिटर्न में बना के पढ़ रहे हैं. फेवरेट फूड इज चिकन, डिपेंडिंग ऑन व्हाट योर ओन. एक मिनट रुकना जनता. Okay. This, whatever is the live grass shrimp, that is whatever your dietary preferences, उसके हिसाब से ऑर्डर बना लेना. पहला खाना किसको रेफर कर रहा है, दूसरा खाना किसको रेफर कर रहा है, तीसरा खाना किसको रेफर कर रहा है. हम अपनी प्रेफरेंस के हिसाब से चिकन और पिज्जा और करेला, ये 3 ऑर्डर में रख रहे हैं. चिकन, पिज्जा, करेला. उस हिसाब से लाइव ग्रास श्रिम्प इज चिकन, रेड प्रॉन्स आर पिज्जा, एंड so and do you also understand this writing style are so? I found it very interesting for the simple reason, so ये अंग्रेज लोग भी बोलते हैं. Since researchers couldn't explain to the cuttlefish that they would need to wait for their shrimp, they trained them to recognize certain shapes that indicated when a food item would become available. The symbols were pasted on transparent drawers so that cuttlefish could see the food that was stored inside. One drawer labeled with circle to mean immediate held raw king prawn. Another drawer labeled with triangle to mean delayed held live grass shrimp. During a control experiment, square labels meant never. Hopefully all of us have read enough about experiments to know what control experiments are. Control experiment, you have a hypothesis that you're testing, and in order to check whether that hypothesis is valid or not, you also have a null hypothesis being tested simultaneously. The setup that you have for it is known as control experiment. Far too many times we have come across it in passages already. तो control experiment अपने को आता है. तो ओरिजिनल मार्शमेलो टेस्ट हुआ करता था, बच्चे को दो 15 मिनट वेट कर तो दूसरा मार्शमेलो देंगे. जिन दिन बच्चे ने रुका, आगे जाके भाई लोगों की लाइफ में द लाइवलीहुड ऑफ सक्सेस इन देयर लाइफ वाज हायर. मछली को बता तो सकते नहीं, तो फिर काम क्या किया, पहले उनको सिंबल में ट्रेन करा, कौन सी चीज इमीडिएट मिलेगी, कौन सी चीज बाद में मिलेगी, और फिर उनका खाना प्रेफरेंस, उनकी फूड कंजम्पशन प्रेफरेंस ऑर्डर के हिसाब से जो चीज उनको क्या बताएं सेकंड मोस्ट पसंद थी वो इमीडिएटली दे रहे थे, जो चीज उनको सबसे ज्यादा पसंद थी वो डिले से दे रहे थे. इतना बताया हुआ सेकंड पैराग्राफ में. नाउ the second test is of course not the marshmallow test, which is why it has been called a modified version. If their self-control is flexible, and I hadn't just trained them to wait in any context, you would expect the cuttlefish to take the immediate reward in the control, even if it's their second preference. Says Schnell, and that's what they did. Okay. So this was the hypothesis that without any training, without any if they did not have any training, whatever was available to them, they would eat it. And that is exactly what they did in the control experiment. That showed the researchers that cuttlefish wouldn't reject the prawns if it was the only food available. So when you have a lack of options, yes, you will accept even your second preferred item. ठीक है, चलेगा. In the experimental trials, the cuttlefish didn't jump on the prawns if the live grass shrimp were labeled with a triangle. Remember, triangle indicated delay se lekin aayega. Many waited for the shrimp drawer to open up. Each time the cuttlefish showed it could wait, the researchers tagged another 10 seconds on to the next round of waiting before releasing the shrimp. Which now tells me this was not an experiment that happened once. This was an experiment that happened iteratively. They did it multiple times. So first time they waited for 10 seconds before opening the shrimp drawer. The second time they waited for 20 seconds before opening the shrimp drawer. The next time they waited 30 seconds before opening the shrimp drawer. ये सब कुछ कहानी है. The longest that a cuttlefish waited was 130 seconds. 10-10 के साइकिल में बढ़ा रहे थे. तो कितने टेस्ट हो गए होंगे? टेस्ट हो गए होंगे 13. एपी के हिसाब से है, मैथ से, बट ठीक है. Schnell says that the cuttlefish usually sat at the bottom of the tank and looked at the two food items while they waited. But sometimes they would turn away from the king prawn as if to distract themselves from the temptation of the immediate reward. Okay. In past studies, humans, chimpanzees, parrots, and dogs also try to distract themselves while waiting for a reward. They have also spawned into a popular क्या होता है YouTube subculture. डॉग्स के सामने 2 पीस ऑफ मीट रख दो और फिर ओनर चला जाता है और फिर डॉग देख रहा होता है कब आएगा मेरा ओनर खाने के लिए. वही सारी हरकतें की बातें चल रही है. It the fact that cuttlefish are trying to distract themselves is not unique to cuttlefish. It is something that has been displayed in other animals as well when they are trying to delay gratification. Okay. Not every species can use self-control, but most of the animals that can share another trait in common: long social lives. Cuttlefish, on the other hand, are solitary creatures that don't form relationships even with mates or young. So cuttlefish are full of personality. They have the potential to display self-control. There have been experiments that have already been conducted which showed that cuttlefish could wait up to 130 seconds type की हरकतें दिखा रखी है. But ये 130 seconds is not a fair reflection of what cuttlefish would do out in the wild, because these were trained cuttlefish. These were trained. उनको symbols के बारे में सिखाया गया and everything. ठीक है. अब solitary creatures. Now, all other creatures that have shown the tendency to delay satisfaction of needs and wants, they have another trait in common, which is long social lives. Cuttlefish does not share this attribute. They are solitary creatures, and they don't even form relationships with mates or youngs. We don't know if living in a social group is important for complex cognition unless we also show those abilities are lacking in less social species, says comparative psychologist Jennifer Wong. ये एकदम ही अलग लास्ट लाइन निकाल दिया कि भाई up until then, at that point, up until the time that cuttlefish had displayed the potential for self-control, one could make the argument that because all the animals that have displayed self-control potential have also been part of social groups, huge social groups, or leading long social lives, somehow the ability to delay gratification is something that you get trained for when you're living in social, when you're a social animal. But cuttlefish is an exception to that statement, and therefore you cannot make a definitive statement one way or the other. You cannot make a statement one way or the other. अभी ये हालत है. This is the end of the passage. अब सवाल देखना चालू करते हैं. All of the following constitute a point of difference between the original and modified versions of the Marshmallow Test, except that the former was performed over a longer time span than the latter. Now, of course, the former was performed. If you want to just look at the smaller experiment, then in the former, we had 15 minutes ka wait time before getting the second marshmallow. Here, the max we went to was 130 seconds ka wait time or 2 minutes ka wait time. If you want to look at the entirety, of the experiment, those were children and they achieved success later on in life. Uske baare mein baat hi. Of course, there was a much longer time span. So, is this a difference between the original and the modified version of the Marshmallow Test? Yes, but because this is the first option, we do not eliminate it. Next, The former had human subjects while the latter had cuttlefish. Okay. A और B में से एक रिजेक्ट करना. Which option can you reject? Which option can you reject? B. Okay. ठीक है, बढ़ाते हैं. The former used verbal communication with its subjects while the latter had to develop a symbolic means of communication. A और C में से एक रिजेक्ट करना है. कौन सा रिजेक्ट करें? C. इसके अंदर ये समझ पा रहे हो? The reason why people are going for B or going for C is ये तो डेफिनेट ट्रूथ्स है ना. यहाँ पे longer time span than the latter, वो भी डेफिनेट ट्रूथ ही है. इज्जत से A, B और C सीधा ही रिजेक्ट हो जाते हैं. बट ठीक है, क्या करें. You cannot abandon the A versus B wala prototype because that will hold you in bad stead when it comes to more tricky questions. ये आसान है इसलिए chill चल रहा है, लेकिन ये नहीं कि भाई मजे चल रहे हैं. The former correlated self-control and future success. This part seems appropriate. While the latter correlated self-control and survival advantages. It's not so much survival advantages, it was more to do with dietary preferences, no? If you delayed consumption, you could get the food item that you like more. So, between A and D, A gets rejected now. We are left with D. Fairly straightforward. Getting to the answer here is not that much of a challenge. Next question. Which one of the following, if true, would best complement the passage's findings? This is a critical word here. This is one of those questions that I got wrong. सवाल ही गलत हो गया, but fun. Hopefully, when you did your own analysis, you Googled the word complement, or you know the meaning of the word complement. You paid attention to it. In my first read, I went, which one of the following, if true, would best support the passage's findings? I went into support the passage's findings. Cuttlefish cannot distinguish between geometrical shapes. Can you see this would be a problem if they cannot distinguish between geometrical shape? The experiment itself was a sham. Experiment hi sham tha, because the experiment was dependent on you training them about geometrical shapes, which gave meaning to whether it would be immediate or delayed or never. And if cuttlefish cannot distinguish between geometrical shape, so this doesn't really complement the passage's findings. I haven't really spoken of what complement means. I'm holding off on that. Okay. Cuttlefish are equally fond of live grass shrimp and raw prawn. If cuttlefish were equally fond of live grass shrimp and raw prawn, then would they wait? Would they wait? No. When they get raw prawn, they would have eaten it. So this also doesn't line up with what has been offered in the passage. Cuttlefish wait longer than 100 seconds for the shrimp drawer to open up. You can reject C based on cuttlefish wait. Do they wait every time longer than 100 seconds? Or were there certain instances when they waited for longer than 100 seconds? If it was can wait, it would have been better. Yes, Kaustubh. If it was can wait, it would have been better. The fact that it is right now an outright statement, cuttlefish wait longer than 100 seconds for the shrimp drawer to open up, तो चल जाएगा. अच्छा. Even if somehow in your mind you distorted the option to cuttlefish can wait longer than 100 seconds for the shrimp drawer to open up, light, कोई दिक्कत नहीं. D. Cuttlefish live in big groups that exhibit sociability. This is in direct contradiction of what was given in the passage. Yet, pay attention. This was also in direct contradiction of what was given in the passage, but was that the reason why we rejected it? Option B is also direct contradiction to what was given in the passage. Is that the reason why we rejected it? The question itself gives me which of the following, if true, हमने बी रिजेक्ट इसलिए किया था क्योंकि it would not complement the passage's findings. Even if they were equally fond of live grass shrimp and raw prawn, it would not complement the passage, the findings of the experiment. Then the findings of the experiment would become confounding. Why are they waiting for the second food item if the first food item that is released is equally appealing to them as the second food item? It would not complement the passage's findings. Additionally, this word complement, this is what complements means adds to in terms of depth or quality. Adds to in terms of depths or quality. Now, which of the following, if true, would best complement the passage's findings? ध्यान देना. The end of the passage, we had this uncertain state wherein we don't know if living in a social group is important for complex cognition unless we show those abilities are lacking in less social species, says comparative psychologist Jennifer Wong. If cuttlefish live in big groups that exhibit sociability, would this not be an addition? This does not really impact the result of my findings and adds more quality to it because it would be in line with what we expected of cuttlefish. What we expect from, not every species can use self-control, but most of the animals that share another trait in common, long social life, cuttlefish, say if they were living in big groups that exhibit sociability, the expectation would be they would do it more appropriately, or basically whatever findings you've gotten in passage, you would add more quality to it, you would add more insight to it, you would add more depth to it if cuttlefish were indeed exhibiting sociability. Complement does not mean support, directly support की बात नहीं है. Complement means it adds to in terms of depth or quality. तो cuttlefish goes with, not necessarily. Complements does not go with. Complements, देख कैसे समझाए? आई डोंट नो अबाउट योर डाइटरी प्रेफरेंसेस, लेकिन हमने अपना पिज्जा का बताया ना. हम जब भी पिज्जा खाते हैं मेरे को साथ में गार्लिक ब्रेड खाने की आदत है. जब भी पिज्जा खाते हैं साथ में गार्लिक ब्रेड इज कॉम्प्लीमेंट टू माई पिज्जा. ऐसा नहीं है कि अगर गार्लिक ब्रेड नहीं होगा तो हम नहीं खाएंगे पिज्जा, या गार्लिक ब्रेड खाने के लिए मेरे को पिज्जा चाहिए ही चाहिए, बट पसंद है मेरे को. कॉम्प्लीमेंट साथ में है, डज उसका एब्सेंस से मेरा कोर प्रेमिस नहीं चैलेंज होता है, लेकिन अगर वो आ गया तो ज्यादा अच्छा लगता है. बेसिकली गिव्स मोर डेप्थ एंड क्वालिटी, वही वाली लड़ाई है. अच्छा, फन चीज इसमें से हमने तो सी मारा था क्योंकि हमने वही कैन वेट नहीं पढ़ा था, बस वेट पढ़ा था, उसके हिसाब से काम चला दिया था. साथ के साथ लड़ाइयां हैं, बस अपना गलत. दिस इज द क्वेश्चन दैट आई गॉट रॉन्ग. हम ये सब कुछ बता रहे हैं व्हाट आई गॉट रॉन्ग, एंड उसके बाद जब बैठ के रीजनिंग करना चालू करा, माय फर्स्ट चेक वाज ऑफ कोर्स कॉम्प्लीमेंट. देखते कॉम्प्लीमेंट का मीनिंग तो नहीं गलत पढ़ रहा है. गलत उससे समझ में आया कॉम्प्लीमेंट की मीनिंग ही गलत पकड़ी हुई थी. फिर ठीक है, आंसर गलत आना ही था. जब ठीक हो गया तो ठीक हो गया. यो अच्छा, जब हालत ये भी आ गई ना यहाँ पे सी के अंदर, क्योंकि दिमाग इस वाले the framework, which is why I'm saying this question was a learning experience. We've had questions of support और oppose, इस टाइप के हमने सवाल देखे हैं. ये कॉम्प्लीमेंट की आइडिया के साथ वाला सवाल पहली बार देखा. तो इस टाइप का अगर आया, कॉम्प्लीमेंट अगर आया तो ध्यान देना पड़ेगा. तो this is a new question variant for me. I don't know, maybe it has been there all this while. I never really paid that much attention, लेकिन इस बार तो मेरे को लगा ये नया है, तो प्लीज ध्यान देना. ओके, नेक्स्ट. Which one of the following cannot be inferred from Alexandra Schnell's experiments? Okay. Cuttlefish exert self-control with the help of divergence. हाँ, ऐसी कुछ बातें थी. They distracted themselves or they turned away just like other animals. Intelligence in species is impossible without sociability. Can this be inferred? If this could have been inferred, तब फिर ये जो लास्ट लाइन दी हुई है जेनिफर वॉन्क वाली, that would be an irrelevant line. तो फिर ये वाली चीज तो इन्फर नहीं कर सकते. बिटवीन ए एंड बी, ए वाज डायरेक्टली स्टेटेड, तो ए गया, बी रिमेन्स. Cuttlefish exercise choice when it comes to food. अच्छा, the wording I really don't agree with. Cuttlefish exercise choice when it comes to food, or they have preferences when it comes to food. I would say they have preferences. That would have been better framing of the option. But then again, ठीक है, exercise choice when it comes to food, चला देंगे. Between B and C, clearly C is something that is happening within the example, that is happening within the experiment. B is not there. Hatao. Like human children, cuttlefish are capable of self-control. Yes, they did show us instances of waiting up till 130 seconds. So hata diya. Question 4. What remains here? Option B has to be the answer. Question 4. In which one of the following scenarios would the cuttlefish's behavior demonstrate self-control? देखते हैं. When would you demonstrate self-control? When you have anticipation of a better reward coming forth after a delay. तभी आप self-control दिखाएंगे. Raw prawns are released while live shrimp grass drawer labeled with a square is placed in front of the cuttlefish. Raw prawns release हो गए, लेकिन live shrimp drawer के ऊपर square लगा है. अब यहाँ पे what is beneficial is if you have memory of what works. Circle was immediate. Triangle was delayed. And square was never. Even if you have to go back, square labels meant never. ये दिया हुआ था. So if raw prawns are released and those, the 3 food items का order भी अपने को पता था. Live shrimp grass, raw prawns and Asian shore crab. Raw prawns आपको मिल चुके हैं और आपको LSG का भी मिलेगा नहीं. Would you demonstrate self-control? There is no reason for you to. The best possible choice that you can get is already present in front of you. तो यहां पे तो सेल्फ कंट्रोल डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करने का कोई पॉइंट नहीं. बी, Asian shore crabs and raw prawns are simultaneously released, while a live grass shrimp drawer labeled with a triangle is placed in front of cuttlefish to be opened after 1 minute. ये चीज मोस्ट प्रेफर्ड वाला आइटम आफ्टर सम डिले ट्रायंगल के साथ मार्क्ड है. आफ्टर डिले ऑफ 1 minute आएगा. We have seen cuttlefish can wait up till 130 seconds. So in case B, are they more likely to show restraint or self-control compared to A? Of course. Between B and A, B survives. Moving on to C. Raw prawns are released while an Asian shore crab drawer labeled with triangle is placed in front of the cuttlefish to be opened after 1 minute. अब देखिए, प्रॉन्स रिलीज कर दिया है और एशियन शोर क्रैब. इन दोनों में से तो ज्यादा प्रिफर्ड मेरे को रॉ प्रॉन्स ही है. देन देयर इज नो रीजन फॉर cuttlefish to wait. They will happily eat the raw prawns and their life is chill. There is no need to display self-control. D. Live shrimp grass are released. आगे पढ़ने की भी जरूरत नहीं. The most preferred food item is already released. There is no need to wait. There is no need to display self-control. This is also gone. What is left is B. And our life is happy. इसके अंदर वर्स्ट केस में सेकंड वाला गलत हुआ होगा. बाकी 1, 3, 4 तो स्मूथ अंदर सबका सेट. क्या बात. मूविंग ऑन. We cannot travel outside our neighborhood without passports. We must wear the same plain clothes. We must exchange our houses every 10 years. We cannot avoid labor. We all go to bed at the same time. We have religious freedom, but we cannot deny that the soul dies with the body. Since, but for the fear of punishment, they would have nothing but contempt for the laws and customs of society. Okay. In Moore's time, for much of the population, given the plenty and security on offer, such restraints would not have seemed overly unreasonable. Up until this point, if you are not catching on, there are certain clues that you should pay attention to. Ek to ye, the ellipses that you have here, which means this was a description of something which is being described as Moore's time. Within Moore, M is capital. So this Moore or More, depending on what part of India you are, if you're from Maharashtra, you would think of More. So in More's time, for much of the population, given the plenty and security on offer, such restraints would not have seemed overly unreasonable. So in More's time, for majority of the population, given the riches, plenty, prosperity, given the plenty here refers to prosperity and security on offer, सबके पास खाने पीने को भी था और सबके पास सिक्योरिटी भी थी. Such restraints would not seem overly unreasonable. ये नहीं लग रहा यार ये क्या कर दिया तुमने, ऐसा कैसे restrictions or limitations. We live in a society now where individuality is somehow become the cornerstone of everything. Individuality at the cost of harming others is also accepted. क्योंकि you are a king, you are a queen, नाटक चल रहा, but what the passage is initially talking of is, can you see, homogeneity and absolute submission to social control. तुम अपने नेबरहुड के बाहर पासपोर्ट क्यों नहीं जा सकते, तुम वही सेम कपड़े पहनोगे सारे लोग, एक ही मतलब थोड़े टाइम में तुम्हारा घर बदलना ही पड़ेगा, तुम मेहनत करना अवॉइड नहीं कर सकते, तुम्हें सोना भी सेम टाइम पे है, सारी बातें तुम्हें सिमिलर माननी पड़ेंगी. ओके. फॉर मॉडर्न रीडर्स हाउएवर, Utopia appears to rely upon relentless transparency, the repression of variety, and the curtailment of privacy. At this time, hopefully all of us also manage to understand the capital U here refers to a noun, and therefore this utopia is most probably a work of fiction. Utopia is most probably a work of fiction, some book that is written. In which case, now going back and reading this would make more sense. In a book called Utopia, these were the constraints that he had mentioned there. And they don't seem that reasonable in his time. There was no utopia in More's time. The author More or More, the author More's, there was no precise utopia existing in More's time. It was more in his work of fiction, Utopia, the constraints that were mentioned, that were placed upon the population, they don't seem unreasonable. Okay. Utopia appears to rely upon relentless transparency, the repression of variety, and the curtailment of privacy. Utopia provides security, but at what price? In both its external and internal relations, indeed, it seems perilously dystopian. Hopefully, we are also familiar with the idea of utopia and dystopia. Utopia is considered a society, the perfect society is the utopia, and dystopia is the absolutely ruined society. So somebody would define utopia as जहाँ पे सारे लोग मिलके काम करें, ये करे वो करे. Somebody would describe dystopia as जहाँ पे सारे लोग मिलके काम करें, depending upon your conception of what utopia is. But basically there is a common thread in utopia. There is no sadness, there is no pain being experienced by people, and in dystopia everybody is in pain. Everybody is in pain. हर किसी का कुछ ना कुछ नुकसान हो ही रहा है. In utopia किसी का नुकसान नहीं हो रहा है. इनफैक्ट किसी का नुकसान नहीं हो रहा है, किसी को दुख नहीं हो रहा है, which unfortunately translates into हर किसी का बराबर फायदा हो रहा है. और हर किसी का बराबर फायदा करने के लिए You are thereby restricting the individual ability to do better for themselves. So that attribute where you are limiting an individual's potential, that is being described here as, it seems perilously dystopian, where you don't have the ability to chase after your dreams and do this and that. Okay. Such a conclusion might be fortified by examining selectively the tradition which follows more on these points. Even when you read this line, selectively the tradition which follows more on these points, should tell you work of fiction, written text, kuch aisa chal raha hai. These often portrays societies where it would be impossible for man to be depraved or wicked. Look at the wording. It is not that the man would not be motivated not to be depraved or wicked. It is more, there are constraints because of which it would be impossible for a man to be depraved or wicked. Hopefully you understand the difference. In one, you are choosing not to engage in evil acts out of what you believe in, out of what you have been motivated to, versus you are you are choosing not to engage in evil because you realize you don't have that luxury or you don't have that option. This is achieved both through institution and mores. अच्छा, यहाँ पे दिस वर्ड का जिसने भी ये लिखा है आर्टिकल, दैट पर्सन हैज प्लेड अ, क्या बताएं, अच्छा सा जोक. यहाँ पे मोरे भाई साहब ऑथर हैं. यहाँ पे मोरेस इज सोशल कस्टम्स एंड सोशल स्ट्रक्चर्स दैट आर कॉमनली एक्सेप्टेड. इसको मोरेज ही बोलते हैं. ठीक है. दिस अचीव्ड बोथ थ्रू इंस्टीट्यूशन एंड मोरेज which underpin the common life. Even if you did not understand mores, you completely ignore this part. Your interpretation of this passage or this paragraph is not going away. खराब नहीं हो रहा है, ठीक ही चलेगा. This is achieved both through institutions. This is achieved through institutions which underpin the common life. The passions are regulated and inequalities of wealth and distinction are minimized. You artificially maintain equality. Wealth नहीं बढ़ने देंगे किसी को ज्यादा credit नहीं देंगे. All that nonsense. Needs, vanity, and emulation are restrained, often by prizing equality and holding riches in contempt. ओहो, इतना पैसा, इतना दिखावा, ऐसा क्यों चल रहा है? That sort of statement. The desire for public power is curbed. Okay. Basically, desire for public power is curbed को पता है? We are, ये लाइन पढ़ के ना, most likely in your head you would think of the idea, पॉलिटिकल पावर पाने के लिए लोग लड़ाई नहीं कर रहे, मतलब किसी को ऐसा नहीं कि हम पॉलिटिशियन बनेंगे. बट आई एम ऑल्सो सेइंग पब्लिक पावर कुड ऑल्सो कम इन द फॉर्म ऑफ यू हैविंग एम्बिशन. तुम अपने ऑफिस के अंदर ही अच्छा वर्कर बनना चाहते, सीईओ बनना चाहते, इवन दैट इज कर्ब्ड. एम्बिशन इज व्यूड नेगेटिवली. Marriage and sexual intercourse are often controlled. In Tommaso Campanella's The City of Sun, 1623, अब तक तो भाई साहब हर किसी ने पकड़ लिया होगा. वी आर टॉकिंग ऑफ अ वर्क ऑफ फिक्शन. Tommaso Campanella, the author, The City of the Sun, the first great literary utopia after More's. Relations are forbidden to men before the age of 21 and women before 19. This was in reference to the last point. Marriage and sexual intercourse are often controlled. Communal child rearing is normal. For Campanella, this commences at the age 2. Greater simplicity of life, living according to nature is often a result. The desire for simplicity and purity are closely related. Okay. I have to go on one of my segues. If I call something simple, does that necessarily mean it is easy? Far too many people confuse simple with easy. Hopefully we have reached at that point in our life when we realize simple is the most difficult idea. Complex is easy बिकॉज कॉम्प्लेक्स में गलती भी हो जाती है ना, तो बाद में यू हैव अ जस्टिफिकेशन. सिंपल में गलती हो जाती है, यू डोंट हैव अ जस्टिफिकेशन. ओके. People become more alike in appearance, opinion, and outlook than they have ever been. Unity, order, and homogeneity thus prevail at the cost of individuality and diversity. This model, as J.C. Davis demonstrates, dominated early modern utopianism, and utopian homogeneity remains a familiar theme well into the 20th century. Achha, the second paragraph, in terms of new ideas and new content, was very limited. It was simply uh, talking about there is homogeneity, and any sorts of distinction between individuals is looked down upon and controlled in utopian societies. Given these considerations, it is not unreasonable to take our starting point here, the hypothesis that utopia and dystopia evidently share more in common than is often supposed. मतलब what we are getting at is utopia के अंदर the expectation is everybody is at an equal level. हर किसी के पास खुशी है, हर किसी के पास wealth है, हर किसी के पास सब कुछ है. डिस्टोपिया में भी हर किसी के पास दुख है, हर किसी के पास गम है, हर किसी के पास जिंदगी में दिक्कतें ही दिक्कतें हैं. In fact, one person's utopia could be another person's dystopia. It depends on viewpoint. For hardcore communists, उनके लिए कैपिटलिज्म डिस्टोपिया है या कैपिटलिस्टिक इकोनॉमी डिस्टोपिया है, लेकिन कैपिटलिस्टिक लोगों के लिए हार्डकोर कम्युनिस्ट सेटअप भयंकर डिस्टोपिया है, जबकि रिवर्स में मस्त यूटोपिया टाइप का बन जाएगा. ओके. Indeed, they might be twins, the progeny of the same parents. Insofar as this proves to be the case, my linkage of both here will be uncomfortably close for some readers. Yet, we should not mistake this argument for the assertion that all utopias are or tend to produce dystopia. Basically, what the author is getting at is, please ये मत infer कर लेना just because यूटोपिया के अंदर होमोजेनिटी रखने के चक्कर में इंडिविजुअलिटी एंड डाइवर्सिटी कर्व कर रहे हैं, इसके चक्कर में सारी की सारी यूटोपिया विल इवेंचुअली टर्न इनटू डिस्टोपिया. या जो बैटमैन का डायलॉग रहता था, उसने मारा था ना, कौन था जो बाद में टू फेस बना था, जो भी बेल वाली मूवीज में था, यू आइदर डाई अ हीरो और लिव लॉन्ग इनफ टू टर्न इनटू द विलन. वो वाली हालत नहीं है. यू विल नॉट, ऑल यूटोपियाज विल नॉट नेसेसरली टर्न इनटू डिस्टोपियाज. Those who defend this proposition will find that their association here is not nearly close enough. Okay. For we have only to acknowledge the existence of thousands of successful intentional communities in which a cooperative ethos predominates and where harmony without coercion is the rule, to set aside such an assertion. Can you also see the difference between the utopia defined earlier and the sort of society that is defined later? In the earlier ones, you had rules. You cannot travel outside the neighborhood without passports. You had to wear similar clothes. You had to change houses every 10 years. Those were rules that were imposed upon you. But the subsequent societies or the intentional communities that have been mentioned here, for we have only to acknowledge the existence of thousands of successful intentional communities in which a cooperative ethos predominates and where harmony without coercion is the rule, to set aside such an assertion. Not every utopia will necessarily turn into dystopia. के लिए ये example reference में दिया है. And the difference in the society described earlier and this society, there people had to follow the rules. Here, people are buying into the ethos of the group being the supreme and individual being subservient to the objectives of the group. Here, the individual submersion in a group is consensual, though this concept is not unproblematic. इज्जत से इस कॉन्सेप्ट के साथ although the author doesn't go into this, एक बहुत ही बड़ा प्रॉब्लम ये समझना, if everyone around you believes in something, it is but likely that you will also believe in it without necessarily questioning it. In fact, इसका एनिमल किंगडम से ही एग्जांपल रहता है. As long as the baby birds are in the nest and the mother brings food over and feeds them, they don't really want to fly. ठीक है, बैठे घर पे खाना वाना आ रहा है, चिल चल रहा है. इसीलिए जब उड़ाना होता है उनको तो the mothers have to push them out of the net. Once they start falling, then they start flapping their wings and then they realize, ओ फ्लाइंग भी कर सकते हैं अपने, और फ्लाइंग करना तो काफी कूल है. उसके बाद भाई लोग घोंसले के अंदर सेट नहीं रहना चाहते, उसके बाद उड़ना चाहते हैं. बट प्रायर टू दैट, बिकॉज देव नेवर एक्सपीरियंस द जॉय ऑफ फ्लाइंग, बिकॉज देव नेवर एक्सपीरियंस द एबिलिटी टू मूव अराउंड ऑन देयर ओन एंड गेट योर ओन फूड, दे फील लाइक बढ़िया तो चल रही है लाइफ. सो हियर जब यहाँ पे बोला जा रहा है कि कंसेंशुअल है, द इंडिविजुअल डिसाइड्स कि हाँ हम सोसाइटी या कम्युनिटी जिसका हम पार्ट है, आई विल क्या बताए, बी सबसर्विएंट टू देम. पंगा ये है, डू हैव दे बीन इन्फॉर्म्ड ऑफ द ऑल्टरनेटिव ऑफ लिविंग एन इंडिविजुअल डाइवर्स लाइफ. अगर नहीं पता है उसको, देन दिस इज नॉट रियली कंसेंशुअल, नॉट रियली कंसेंशुअल. तब फिर because you have been given only one side of the story, you believe that to be true without questioning it, ये चल रहा है. This is most likely the problematic aspect that the author is talking of, but passage के अंदर है नहीं, ये बस अपने extra knowledge के लिए है कहानी. It results not in enslavement but voluntary submission to a group norms. Harmony is achieved without harming others. क्या बात. Harmony is achieved without warning others or harming others. ठीक है. नहीं नहीं, इन द कंसेंशुअल सोसाइटीज, इन द इंटेंशनल कम्युनिटीज सही बात है. पहले वाले जो सोसाइटी की कहानी थी उसके अंदर देखो, सिंस बट फॉर द पियर ऑफ पनिशमेंट दे वुड हैव नथिंग बट कंटेम्प्ट फॉर द लॉज एंड कस्टम्स ऑफ सोसाइटी. अगर तुम उनको हड़का के नहीं रखोगे तब तक वो मानेंगे नहीं सोसाइटी के नॉर्म्स एंड ट्रेडिशंस. पहले में ये था, हड़का के रखो, उनके पास विकल्प ही मत छोड़ो. डू नॉट लेट देम हैव द ऑप्शन ऑफ डिविएटिंग फ्रॉम व्हाट इज बीइंग एनफोर्स्ड अपॉन देम. इन द सेकंड वन, हार्मनी इज बीइंग अचीव्ड विदाउट नेसेसरली पुट हार्मिंग अदर्स. उनको ये नहीं कि भाई अगर नहीं किया तो हम तुम्हारे तो मतलब पैर काट देंगे, हाथ काट देंगे, जेल में डाल देंगे, खाना नहीं देंगे. ये कुछ हड़का नहीं रहे. दे बाय इनटू द आइडिया देमसेल्व्स एंड देन आर dedicated members to the cause. Okay. All of the following arguments are made in the passage except that. अभी तक ये भी देखना, एक except, if true cannot be inferred, ये सिंपल है. यहां पे भी एक except है, यहां पे भी एक except है. All of the following arguments are made in the passage except that. There have been thousands of communities where homogeneity and stability have been achieved through choice rather than by force. This is what the last paragraph or the last part of the last paragraph has been talking of. There have been thousands of successful intentional communities. B, in early modern utopianism, the stability of utopian societies was seen to be achieved only with individuals surrendering their sense of self. The description of early utopianism was you have to give up the sense of self. Individuality give up करनी पड़ेगी. Constraints on individuality and diversity reference में था. Between the two of them, if I had to reject an option, I would say A is directly mentioned, B is still a restatement, a slight distortion of what is given in the passage. तो B survive करने दे रहे. Option C and B में अब लड़ाई है. In Moore's time, there was plenty and security. ठीक है अब तक. So people did not need restraints that could appear unreasonable. ध्यान देना about the restraints and unreasonable. This is a tricky option because what they've done here is they have taken similar words but by changing the syntax, words आगे पीछे करके ना meaning पूरी निकाल दी है. Here they said such restraints would not have seemed overly unreasonable, and here they said did not need restraints that could appear unreasonable. बेसिकली बिकॉज प्लेंटी एंड सिक्योरिटी था, इसीलिए उनको रिस्ट्रेंट्स की जरूरत नहीं थी जो अनरीजनेबल अपीयर करे. अच्छा, अगर प्लेंटी और सिक्योरिटी नहीं होती, then they would have liked restraints that were unreasonable. Of course not. This is a distortion of what is being given here, an absolute distortion. In fact, उल्टा ही पे जाने लगा है. Between B and C, B हट रहा है, C survives. D पे अब लड़ाई है. The tradition of utopian literature has often shown societies in which it would be nearly impossible for anyone to be sinful or criminal. यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है, it would be almost impossible for man to be depraved or wicked. ये भी गया, C बच गया. That should be the answer. Question 6. All of the following statements can be inferred from the passage, except that many conceptions of utopian societies emphasize the importance of social uniformity and cultural homogeneity. यही इनिशियल 2 पैराग्राफ्स के अंदर कहानी थी, होमोजेनिटी एंड यूनिफॉर्मिटी, एवरीवन बीइंग सबसर्विएंट टू द सोसाइटी, सब कुछ एकदम आइडेंटिकल रहना है. द सोसाइटी टेक्स एब्सोल्यूट कंट्रोल ओवर इन योर इंडिविजुअल चॉइसेस. It is possible to see utopias as dystopias with a change in perspective, because one person's utopia could be seen as another's dystopia. Between the two of them, I would say A और B में से A हटा रहे, B रख रहे, for the simple reason perspective बदलने से यूटोपिया डिस्टोपिया बन जाता है. This was something that you could infer, but it is not directly given in the passage. So between A and B, B is a better option. B is a better option. C. Utopian societies exist in a long tradition of literature dealing with imaginary people practicing imaginary customs in imaginary worlds. अब B और C में से, see, given that we were talking of fiction, we were talking of writings, तो लिटरेचर में ऑफ कोर्स इट इज इमेजिनरी पीपल ओनली जिनका रेफरेंस चल रहा है. इट इज नॉट रियल वर्ल्ड पीपल. रियल वर्ल्ड पीपल के बारे में लिखा होता तो ये जो इंटेंशनल कम्युनिटीज है उनके रेफरेंस में कुछ रहता. बिटवीन बी एंड सी, सी गोज, फिर भी है. अब बी और डी आ गया. यूटोपियन एंड डिस्टोपियन सोसाइटीज आर ट्विंस, द प्रोजेनी ऑफ द सेम पेरेंट्स. This is tricky here क्योंकि अगर you haven't paid attention to or you are unfamiliar with this reading writing style, indeed they might be twins. This sentence here or this phrasing here is to emphasize how they can be mistaken for one another. It is not that they are identical, how they can be mistaken one for the other. एक आदमी देख के यूटोपिया बोले, एक आदमी देख के डिस्टोपिया बोले, ऐसे काम चल सकता. But option D says utopian and dystopian societies are twins. There is no might be, there is no they are similar. They're saying they are identical, which is not the intent of the passage at all. They're saying they share attributes, and in fact, it is possible for people to mistake one setup for the other. यूटोपिया देख के बोल सकते यार ये तो डिस्टोपिया, यहाँ पे कुछ है ही नहीं, या डिस्टोपिया देख के बोले भाई ये तो यूटोपिया, देखो सब बराबरी पे चल रहे हैं. But claiming that they are twins is a distortion of what is given in the passage, and therefore इसको हटाया, इसको रखा. That should be the answer. Yo. Next. From the passage, which one of the following may be seen as a characteristic of a utopian society? A society where public power is earned through merit rather than through privilege. Okay. For this, about public power or something, we only have this. The desire for public power is curbed. एक मिनट रुकना. The desire for public power is curbed. Beyond that, we have no reference or information about public power. A society where public power is earned through merit rather than through privilege. Now, if you are biased and you carry forward your own, information points, you think of Rahul Gandhi's of the world. हाँ ये ठीक लग रहा है, but then this is not something that is referenced in the passage. अपना internal bias मारेगा. Okay, moving on to second option. Institutional surveillance of every individual to ensure his or her security and welfare. Between A and B. Between A and B. ये बताओ, the idea about utopia or the description of utopia is the individual is subservient to the group, the individual submits himself to the group, and the group enforces rules to keep the individual in check. A is talking of political power या public power किसके पास जाएगी, जबकि पैसेज के अंदर पॉलिटिकल पावर की डिजायर को एनकरेज नहीं किया जा रहा है. तो A is talking of a new idea that is not referenced. B is talking of institutional surveillance of every individual to ensure his or her security and welfare. Institutional, you are always under the eye of the big brother that ensures you follow the rules and the diktats given. Between two of them, which may be seen as a characteristic of utopian society? Of course, B. Of course, B. A is not bad. A is not bad. अगर यहीं पर रुक जाता ना, a society where public power is earned through merit, it would even become better. A society where public power's desire is curbed, it would become very, very nice. But abhi ke, in its current form, A and B में, B is better. The regulation of homogeneity through promoting competitive heterogeneity. यूटोपियन सोसाइटी में कभी भी हेट्रोजेनिटी प्रमोट हुई क्या? At least in the societies that have been described in the passage, none whatsoever. Heterogeneity रखना ही नहीं है. In fact, उसका description ही देखो. Same plain clothes, bed at the same time. These were the instructions there. ये तो नहीं हो रहा. A society without any laws to restrain one's individuality, but for the fear of punishment, they would have nothing but contempt for the laws and customs of the society. नहीं, laws को हटाने की बात तो कभी कर ही नहीं सकता. यूटोपिया के अंदर laws ultra strict होने so that everybody toes the line. ये भी चला गया. Question 8. B बचा. B is appropriate. Which sequence of words below best captures the narrative of the passage? In your own words, अगर passage को अगर डिफाइन करना, यूटोपिया का डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया, फिर मोरे के बारे में बताया कि भाई क्या था, क्यों था, फिर लिटरेचर में एग्जांपल दिए कैसे यूटोपिया का डिस्क्रिप्शन रहा है, वेयर द इंडिविजुअल इज सबसर्विएंट टू द सोसाइटी, दैट हैज गॉन ऑन एंड द ट्रेडिशन इज कंटिन्यूइंग इनटू द 20th सेंचुरी. देन यूटोपिया डिस्टोपिया के बीच में डिस्टिंक्शन करना मुश्किल है क्योंकि सिमिलर लगते हैं, बट ऐसा नहीं है कि सारी यूटोपिया विल टर्न इनटू डिस्टोपिया. There have been successful intentional communities where people have willingly agreed to join the cause of the larger good and they have been, मतलब successful communities बोला हुआ है. ये था पूरा flow. अब which sequence of words below best captures the narrative of the passage? Utopia, security, homogeneity, intentional community. यूटोपिया है, अच्छी बात है. Security, do you think was a very, very big point within the passage? Not so much. Homogeneity, yes. Intentional community, yes. बढ़िया है. Security is थोड़ा सा light इस ऑप्शन में. नेक्स्ट पे चलते हैं. Relentless transparency, homogeneity, utopia, dystopia. Between A and B, relentless transparency is a feature of utopia. Homogeneity is a feature of utopia. एंड यूटोपिया एंड डिस्टोपिया आर सिमिलर टू वन अनदर, बट इसके अंदर इंटेंशनल कम्युनिटी वाला जो पॉइंट आखिरी में बताया है, दैट इज एंटायरली साइड स्टेप्ड। साथ के साथ यूटोपिया का रेफरेंस शुड कम द अर्लीस्ट, या रिलेंटलेस ट्रांसपेरेंसी या होमोजेनिटी से पहले यूटोपिया की बात आनी चाहिए। बिटवीन ए एंड बी आई वुड से बी इज वर्स, बी इज वर्स। मूविंग ऑन, सी देखकर यूटोपिया security, dystopia, coercion. Again, intentional community or the societies where the people are willingly adhering to the law of the land, that is being sidesteps entirely. Additionally, within the passage, coercion was in relation to utopia, not to dystopia. Coercion was in relation to utopia. तो ऐसे भी डिस्टोपिया के बाद कोवर्शन का मेंशन गड़बड़ ही है। अच्छा, अब डी देखते हैं, curtailment of privacy, dystopia, utopia, and intentional community. Can you see? डी के अंदर दिक्कत पहली यही है, डिस्टोपिया का रेफरेंस तो यूटोपिया से पहले नहीं है पैसेज के अंदर। यूटोपिया हैज डेफिनेटली कम फर्स्ट, तो ये भी नहीं चलना चाहिए। What remains is A. Despite this security वाला point, despite this security वाला point being weird, this has to survive. अच्छा, इसके अंदर ए के अंदर एक और चैलेंज दैट यू कैन पोटेंशियली अंडरस्टैंड, डिस्टोपिया वाला रेफरेंस है ही नहीं। व्हाट इज प्रेजेंट हियर, डिस्टोपिया डिस्टोपिया डिस्टोपिया, ए के अंदर डिस्टोपिया का रेफरेंस है ही नहीं। येट कैन आई से ऑर्डर वाइज उसके अंदर सबसे कम एरर है। बी के अंदर देखो ऑर्डर का क्या एरर है, रिलेंटलेस ट्रांसपेरेंसी होमोजेनिटी से पहले यूटोपिया आना चाहिए था। सी में कोवर्शन डिस्टोपिया के बाद नहीं आ सकता। थर्ड वाले में डिस्टोपिया यूटोपिया से पहले नहीं आ सकता। ऑर्डर का कोई एरर नहीं है ए में, डिस्पाइट सेवरल इंपॉर्टेंट की एलिमेंट्स नॉट बीइंग प्रेजेंट, but because we are not looking for the perfect option, we are looking for the best option among the four that is presented. A would survive and would be the answer here. Yo. Okay. The sleights of hand that conflate consumption with virtue are a central theme in A Thirst for Empire, a sweeping and richly detailed history of tea by the historian Erica Rappaport. Okay. Sleights of hand, this is a phrase which means deliberate deception. Deliberate deception. Sleight of hand is usually in reference to magicians that do card tricks or coin tricks or wo chote red ball wale tricks. They are referred to as sleights of hand. Conflate means deliberately, mistakenly create an equality between two things. Deliberately, mistakenly create an equality between two things. Example wise, you can think, we in our society we conflate marks with future success potential. Marks that you obtain in exams with future success potential, that is a conflation, that is an absolute conflation. Jaruri nahi hai. So the sleights of hand that conflate consumption with virtue are the central theme in A Thirst for Empire, a sweeping and richly detailed history of tea by the historian Erica Rappaport. Some book. Thirst for Empire is the name of the book she has written. How did tea evolve from an obscure China drink to a universal beverage imbued with civilizing properties? Imbued with or containing civilizing properties. The answer, in brief, revolves around this conflation. Not only by profit-motivated marketers, but by a wide variety of interest groups. No, usually, when a product is conflated with something, there is a group that benefits out of it, and usually that group is the business oriented mindset. But here, it is not just the tea sellers. It is not just the tea sellers. For instance, products of Apple, they are conflated with high quality and standard of living and luxury in life. When phones are supposed to serve a purpose, but ठीक है, काम अलग चल रहा है वहां पे. But by a wide variety of interest groups, while abundant historical records have allowed the study of how tea itself moved from east to west, basically factual data about how trading in tea became acceptable and popular. Rappaport is focused on the movement of the idea of tea to suit particular purposes. How did tea become acceptable for consumption or became recommended for consumption in certain social situations or in certain settings? This is what Rappaport is focusing on versus the factual data about is this company started trading with this company, export hua, import hua. None, that data is not the focus of our analysis. The data is not the focus of our book. The focus is more how tea became a part of consumption patterns of different societies. Beginning in the 1700s, the temperance movement advocated for tea as a pleasure that cheered but did not inebriate. And industrialists soon borrowed this moral argument in advancing their case for free trade in tea and hence more open market for their textiles. Moral argument, चाय पीने से खुशी मिलती है, चाय पीने से एंजॉयमेंट मिलता है, लेकिन आप उससे नशा नहीं आता. Tea gives pleasure, but it does not inebriate. It doesn't give you nasha. Of course, this is in direct competition to alcohol. Alcohol was seen as the primary drink or the primary beverage that you consumed in order to enjoy yourself. But now, tea gives you enjoyment, at the same time does not uh, put limits on your understanding of the real world. Factory owners joined in, compelled by the cause of a sober workforce, while Christian missionaries discovered that tea would soothe any colonial encounter. During the Second World War, tea service was presented as a social and patriotic activity that uplifted soldiers and calmed refugees. Basically, this paragraph seems like a reference to the other wide variety of interest groups being mentioned in the first paragraph. Wide variety of interest groups. टी बेचने वालों का क्या आर्ग्यूमेंट था और टी के कंजम्पशन या टी के सेल से दूसरे कौन से ग्रुप से जिनको फायदा हो रहा था, दैट वर पुशिंग कि हाँ भाई टी कंज्यूम करना चाहिए, टी पकड़ना चाहिए. whenever you are able to whenever you are, अच्छा ये मार्केटिंग का ही रूल है, whenever you are able to project an article that you're trying to sell as more than the components themselves, then that makes your marketing campaign even better. अब कैसे समझाएं? Let's say when you buy a Lamborghini or you buy a Maserati, or in this present day and age, when you buy a Bugatti, are you really buying a mode of transportation? Not really. You are buying an identifying marker of how successful and well off you are in life. आप ये सुपर कार्स ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के लिए कम लोग खरीदते हैं. मैक्स लोग इसलिए खरीदते हैं कि दुनिया देखे मेरे पास लैम्बोर्गिनी रखी है, वो कहानी से चल रहा है. यू एंड अगेन, cars are only supposed to serve the primary function, the core function. इसके ऊपर अगर रिसर्च करना हो ना, तो ये देखना, देयर इज समथिंग नोन एज कोर प्रोडक्ट, देयर इज समथिंग नोन एज क्या बताए, implied product or product. ऐसा कहानी कर करके अच्छा सा प्रोडक्ट के अलग अलग लेयर्स होते हैं। मार्केटिंग का चैप्टर जाके रिवाइज करना पड़ेगा, एमबीए के अंदर भी पढ़ाते हैं ये। बस ठीक है। इट्स लाइक एरियल बेचते वक्त ये नहीं बताते कि कपड़े बहुत अच्छे से साफ करता है। एरियल बेचते वक्त ये बताते हैं कि देखो, एरियल या व्हील व्हील बेचते वक्त, नॉट एरियल, व्हील बेचते वक्त ये नहीं दिखाते कि कपड़े अच्छे साफ होते हैं। ये दिखाते हैं द वुमन हु यूजेस व्हील वाइल क्लीनिंग क्लोथ्स, उनके हाथों में कम दुख होगा। या नैपी बेचते वक्त, एज मच एज यू वुड वांट टू एसोसिएट इट विथ कि नैपी का मॉइस्चर कंजम्पशन प्रॉपर्टी हाई है, व्हाट इज एक्चुअली सोल्ड इज नैपी रहेगा तो बच्चे को रैशेज नहीं रहेंगे, इस नैपी से बच्चे को रैशेज नहीं रहेंगे, रात भर चैन से सो पाएगा। इम्प्लाइड बेनिफिट्स भाई साहब भयंकर बताए जाते हैं। दैट इज व्हाट द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ मार्केटिंग इज। अच्छे से काम चल रहा है आगे। But it was teased consumer directed marketing by importers and retailers, and later by brands, that most closely portends current trade debates. Portends means predicts या gave a prediction about आगे क्या अभी क्या चल रहा है trade debates के नाम पे. An early version of the farm to table movement was sparked by anti-Chinese sentiment and concerned over trade deficits. ये देखना, एन अर्ली वर्जन ऑफ फार्म टू टेबल मूवमेंट, सीधा सीधा हम टी फार्म से लेके आए हैं आपके घरों तक, ये एकदम फ्रेश टी एंड एवरीथिंग। It was sparked by anti-Chinese sentiment. Anti-Chinese sentiment, remember, this is an earlier time when if you're not consuming product of your own country, it was viewed as a negative. Now that idea has been changed to consumer के पास option होना चाहिए, consumer के पास multiple choices होनी चाहिए. It is better for the consumer if we have more options and bigger companies competing. But back in the day, the argument was, भाई साहब अपने देश का सामान, क्या बोलते हैं, स्वराज, स्वराज वाला स्वदेशी, स्वदेशी आइडिया जो भारत के अंदर भी चलता था, दैट वाज समथिंग दैट हैज हैपेंड इन ऑल कंट्रीज. एंटी चाइनीज सेंटिमेंट एंड कंसर्न्स ओवर ट्रेड डेफिसिट. अगर हम फॉरेन कंट्री का प्रोडक्ट कंज्यूम करेंगे तो हमारी देश की इकोनॉमी के लिए नॉन बेनिफिशियल है वैसा, as well as by the reality and threat of adulterated tea containing dirt and hedge clippings. So the challenge to the marketing of farm to table, एक, अपने देश का प्रोडक्ट नहीं है, दूसरा उसकी क्वालिटी के ऊपर कंट्रोल नहीं है, क्योंकि क्या पता हमें डर्ट वर्ट मिला के या हेज क्लिपिंग्स मिला के चाय मिल जाए. Lipton, and Lipton is a UK-based company. Lipton was soon advertising from the garden to teacup supply chains originating in British India and supervised by educated Englishmen. Can you see? This is taking care of both concerns. First, आप दूसरे देश का नहीं ले रहे. You are not being unpatriotic while consuming tea. You are consuming tea from British India. तो आप अपने देश, because British India was considered a part of the British Commonwealth, तो अपने देश के प्रोडक्ट ही कंज्यूम कर रहे हैं. एडिशनली उसकी क्वालिटी भी हम इंश्योर कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज द वर्क दैट इज हैपनिंग इज बीइंग सुपरवाइज्ड बाय एजुकेटेड इंग्लिशमैन. होपफुली यू अंडरस्टैंड द racial and discriminatory undertones of this phrasing, educated Englishmen. But ठीक है. While tea marketing always presented direct consumer benefits, health, energy, and relaxation, tea drinkers were also assured that they were participating in a larger noble project that advanced the causes of family, nation, and civilization. Tea was not being drunk because it was tea and it would give you health benefits. It was also being drunk, it was also being marketed to people as, भाई अगर जब आप चाय पी रहे हैं तो आप अपनी नेशन बिल्डिंग में कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं, आपकी फैमिली का स्टेटस बढ़ा रहे हैं. वी एज अ रेस ऑफ पीपल आर मूविंग फॉरवर्ड एंड बिकमिंग बेटर. दैट दोज वर द आइडियाज पुश्ड आउट बाय मार्केटिंग. ओके. Rappaport's treatment of her subject is refreshingly apolitical. Apolitical means she's not being क्या यहाँ पे right or left apolitical नहीं हो रहा, यहाँ पे ये हो रहा है, she's not saying what Britishers did was correct. She's not saying what Britishers did was incorrect. She's simply looking at the tea trade, how tea came into the mainstream and tea became so popular with a very politically neutral lens. ऐसा hua. Apolitical does not mean you will not look at the politics of the time. It is just that you will look at the politics of the time and not have an opinion on it. You will not lean either side, which is slightly difficult for us to do because whenever we have been brought up in a generation of judgment, हम कोई भी चीज देख के ये अच्छा था ये बुरा था, even when I say educated Englishmen, discriminatory and racial undertones वाली बात मेरे दिमाग में आ रही है, but the passage, the author here, Rappaport's treatment of our subject is refreshingly apolitical, which would mean other people who have tried to document it, or other people who have created similar pieces of work, they have not been apolitical. If they had been apolitical, this adjective would not be there. Refreshingly apolitical. Usually people are political in their descriptions or in their works, but Rappaport's apolitical stance is something that is refreshing. Indeed, it is a virtue that readers will be unable to guess her political orientation. Both the miracle of markets and capitalism's dark underbelly are evident in T's complex story. Miracle of markets and capitalism dark's underbelly. Capitalism की positive side or negative side, both of them are evident in T's complex story, as are the complicated effects of British colonialism. ये समझो, these are issues on which you can have political stances, but Rappaport's work is apolitical. She has not expressed her opinion or her leaning either way. Commodity histories are now themselves commodities. Okay. Hopefully we know what commodities mean. Commodities mean things that are bought and sold. Additionally, commodities in its simplest form or its misrepresented form can also be used to reference products and services. Commodity histories are now themselves commodities का मतलब है उसके भी अलग-अलग versions, अलग-अलग types आने लगे. When they say commodities, बहुत सारा, the market has been flooded with a lot of reports about histories of commodities. टी के साथ क्या हुआ, रबर के साथ क्या हुआ, कॉफी के साथ क्या हुआ, 15-20 हजार चीजों के साथ डाल सकते हैं. Recent works investigate cotton, salt, cod, sugar, chocolate, paper, and milk. Is this an exhaustive list? Is this an exhaustive list? Of course not. The size of the list given here is simply an indication or indicator of यार बहुत सारी चीजों की commodity histories बनने लगी है. And morality marketing is now a commodity as well. ठीक है. Morality marketing is now a commodity as well. Do we know morality marketing? Things like morality marketing. वो याद है एप्पल को जब अपना चार्जर देना बंद करना था बिना फोन का दाम कम किए, तो खतरनाक ही हम एनवायरमेंटल डैमेज कम कर रहे हैं इसीलिए हम चार्जर नहीं देंगे और ये नहीं करेंगे. भाई पैसे भी तो कम करो ना, पैसा नहीं कम करेंगे लेकिन ये हम whatever decision you take, if you are able to give it a good spin, वो काम चल जाएगा. That is morality marketing. देखो हम कितने cool है. Applied as well, applied to food, fair trade apparel and eco tourism. ये तो passage के अंदर के examples दिए हुए हैं, हम उसके बाहर का ही दे रहे हैं. Yet tea is, Rappaport makes clear, a world apart. While moral marketing has become commonplace now, and we have had recent works investigating cotton, salt, cod, sugar, chocolate, paper, milk, all sorts of things, tea is different to these. Tea is in a class of its own because it is an astonishing success story in which tea marketers not only succeeded in conveying a sense of moral elevation to the consumer, but arguably did advance the cause of civilization and community. Tea marketers try to promote tea as भाई ये पियोगे तो स्तर बढ़ रहा है तुम्हारा सोसाइटी के अंदर. and they were able to successfully communicate and instill that idea in the consumers. Additionally, it wasn't just the idea that was instilled, there were some actual benefits that were also accrued on account of this marketing that they engaged in. The fact that tea has gone beyond simply stating the idea to actually bringing it into practice, bringing it into the real world, that is what makes tea different. Okay. Next paragraph is such a wonderful paragraph. I have been offered tea at British garden party, a Bedouin empire, a Turkish carpet shop, and a Japanese chashitsu. पता नहीं क्या है ये, but ठीक है. To name a few settings. Can you see a wonderful thing? भारत का नाम नहीं लिया भाई ने, चाइना का नाम नहीं लिया भाई ने, जहां से टी बन के आ रहा है वहां का नाम नहीं लिया है. But fun. The purpose of this line is to say consumption of tea has become universal. हर जगह ही फैल गया. Everybody in different settings हर जगह पे चल गया. Okay. In each case, the offering was more an idea, friendship, community, respect, than a drink. It wasn't just a beverage that was being offered, it was an association that was being offered. And in each case, the idea then created a reality. Consumption of tea together did indeed create that association and camaraderie between us. It is not a stretch to say that tea marketers have advanced the particularly noble cause of human dialogue and friendship. चाय के ऊपर चर्चा, चाय पे चर्चा या बैठक and everything, that has actually happened on account of consumption of tea, and a major credit for this transformation has to be attributed to tea marketers. Okay. First paragraph. Oh, yeah, first question. The author of this book review is least likely to support the view that. Least likely to support the view that. So we are going to find something that is a deviation from what is mentioned in the passage or not mentioned in the passage. Tea drinking was sometimes promoted as a patriotic duty. बिल्कुल लिखा है. Patriotic activity and project advances the causes of family, nation, and civilization. So this was referenced in the passage. लेकिन cancel नहीं करते इसको. B पे चलते हैं. Tea drinking has become a social ritual worldwide. Between A and B, which option to eliminate? Between A and B, which option to eliminate? I will eliminate A. I will eliminate A. क्योंकि when we are mentioned British tea party, Bedouin campfire, Turkish carpet shop, and Japanese chashitsu, to name a few settings, it is implied, or at least the intent is to show that tea has become all pervasive. It is available everywhere. But then saying a social ritual worldwide is a step that the author is implying but not directly stating. A तो directly stated है, तो उसमें कोई लड़ाई नहीं कर सकता. C, the ritual of drinking tea promotes congeniality and camaraderie. This is again a restatement of the last line. It is not a stretch to say that tea marketers have advanced the particularly noble cause of human dialogue and friendship. Between B and C, C is rejected, B remains. B and D. Tea became the leading drink in Britain in the 19th century. देखो, because we have the knowledge कि भारत में आए ही थे Britishers 1800s, as in 1800 something में या 19th century में, तो हाँ उस टाइम पे उनका टी कंजम्पशन का लेवल्स बढ़ गया होगा. But this is not something that is referenced in the passage. This is not something that is referenced in the passage. So between tea drinking has become a social ritual worldwide, and tea became the leading drink in Britain in the 19th century. In fact, we cannot even come to this conclusion that tea has become the leading drink in Britain today based on the passage available in front of us. So एक specific period में tea जीत रहा था, ये तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं आ सकता. B is cancelled. What remains is option D. That will be the answer. Next, this book review argues that according to Rappaport, tea is unlike other morality products because it appealed to a universal group and not just to a niche section of people. देखो फर्स्ट पार्ट तो बोला है अपील टू यूनिवर्सल ग्रुप, हर जगह ही इसका यूटिलिटी हो रहा है, अलग अलग पार्ट्स ऑफ वर्ल्ड में हो रहा है, चलेगा, एंड नॉट जस्ट टू अ नीश सेक्शन ऑफ पीपल. Was this the reason why morality products में tea was separate and others were separate? Not so much. एक तो tea is in leagues apart क्योंकि खतरनाक ही astonishing success story है. It was amazingly successful and it succeeded not only in conveying a sense of moral elevation to the consumer but also arguably did advance the cause of civilization and community. ना केवल आइडिया ट्रांसमिट किया, उस आइडिया को इनैक्ट भी किया, इफेक्ट भी किया. तो ए के अंदर ऑफ कोर्स the fact that it is being applicable to all versus a smaller group, that is not the distinction between the different morality products, but because it is A, it survives. Option B had an actual beneficial effect on social interaction and society in general. Between A and B, of course, A goes away, while B is not perfect. B is not perfect. क्योंकि यहाँ पे देखिए लिखा, but also arguably did advance the cause of civilization and community. मतलब you can make the argument that it had a beneficial effect, but between A and B, B is better. A के साथ दिक्कत है. अच्छा, C was marketed by a wide range of interest groups. Was it marketed by a wide range of interest groups or was it supported by a wide range of interest groups? साथ के साथ दिक्कत यह है, वी आर लुकिंग एट मोरालिटी प्रोडक्ट्स में टी इज अनलाइक अदर्स. वी नो टी was supported by a wide range of interest groups, but दूसरे ग्रुप्स को wide range of interest groups ने सपोर्ट किया कि नहीं, उसके बारे में इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं है. इसीलिए between B and C, while B is a distortion, C is something जिसके बारे में आइडिया ही नहीं है, so this goes away. Was actively encouraged by interest groups in the government. Again, can you see C and D दोनों के साथ सेम पंगा ही है. We don't really have information about the other morality products, how they were treated by the interest groups, and therefore you cannot really claim tea is unlike the other morality products. Tea or other products के बीच में comparison cannot be with regards to interest groups that were supporting it. B भी चला गया. B, despite having had an actual beneficial effect on social interaction and society in general, has to be the answer. Can you see B here and D here? Dystopian, utopian वाला कहानी. Setups are similar, but वहां पे this is the exception, इस unacceptable मान रहे, और यहाँ पे इसको acceptable मान रहे, क्योंकि we are not directly comparing this question to that question. We are simply comparing इस option के अंदर क्या क्या चल रहा है, उसके में तो B ही चल पाएगा. Okay. Today, conflating consumption with virtue can be seen in the marketing of sustainably farmed foods, travel to pristine destinations, ergonomically designed products, natural health supplements. अच्छा, conflating consumption with virtue का idea समझना. You're not only consuming this product, there is a bigger cause that you're serving. There is a bigger cause that you're serving. There is a bigger target that you're fulfilling. वो है conflating consumption with virtue. When you're drinking tea, you are performing your patriotic duty. When you're drinking tea, you are helping the civilization move forward. ऐसी बातें can be seen in the marketing of sustainably farmed foods. Sustainably farmed foods के साथ what is the usual marketing gimmick that is assigned? अर्थ को बचा रहे हैं, अपने फ्यूचर जनरेशंस के लिए हम सबको ठीक रख रहे हैं, ऐसा ऐसा मार्केटिंग चलता है. बी, ट्रैवल टू प्रिस्टीन डेस्टिनेशंस. प्रिस्टीन डेस्टिनेशंस पे जब आप जा रहे होते हैं, कोई ये नहीं बोलता कि आप कल्चर प्रिजर्व कर रहे हैं दुनिया का. ट्रैवल टू प्रिस्टीन डेस्टिनेशंस पे जब आप जा रहे होते हैं तो ये बोला जाता है आप नेचर के करीब जाएंगे. your experience is going to be wonderful. Your consumption of this product is going to be wonderful. That is the major selling point. Instead of you are contributing to क्या बताएं, you are contributing to something for the great betterment of the world. In fact, यहाँ पे conflating consumption with virtue का ना एक और अच्छा एग्जांपल देते हैं. मामा अर्थ करके एक कंपनी है, जानते हैं? वो स्किन क्रीम और जो भी शैम्पू वैम्पू वही नहीं बेच रहे हैं. वो ये बेच रहे हैं कि फॉर एवरी प्रोडक्ट यू बाय हम पेड़ लगा देंगे एंड एवरीथिंग. भाई, कन्फ्लेटिंग कंजम्पशन विथ वर्च्यू. अगर आपको पेड़ लगाने बहुत सारे, तो भाई साहब मामा अर्थ के प्रोडक्ट खरीदिए, हम पेड़ लगा देंगे. दिक्कत क्या है? अच्छा, दिस इज फोकसिंग ऑन you consuming the product and deriving benefit out of it or pleasure out of it. Ergonomically designed products, again, customer benefit is maximized, you deriving pleasure out of it. Natural health supplements, you deriving benefit out of it. Quality of the product is extremely nice. But in none of these cases, B, C, D, in none of these cases, you are doing something for the world or you're performing a higher function. The quality of the product, the quality of the experience that you have, that is going to be amazing. But that is not serving a larger cause. The only one where you can potentially make the argument, we are conflating consumption with virtue, is sustainably farmed foods. Question 12. According to the book review, A Thirst for Empire says that in addition to profit-motivated marketers, tea drinking was promoted in Britain by all of the following except factories to instill sobriety in their labors. Factory owners के बारे में बात बता रखी थी हमें पैसेज के अंदर. And the anti-alcohol lobby as a substitute for consumption of liquor. अब देखो, the temperance movement advocated for tea as a pleasure that cheered but did not inebriate. हो रखा है. Tea drinkers lobbying for product diversity. Tea drinkers lobbying for product diversity. इसके बारे में कोई reference है? None whatsoever. Manufacturers who were pressing for duty-free imports. अब ये देखना, डायरेक्टली नहीं बताया लेकिन यहां पे दूसरे तरीके से बताया. Industrialists soon borrowed this moral argument in advancing their case for free trade of tea. फ्री ट्रेड का मतलब यही है. फ्री ट्रेड का मतलब ये नहीं कि फ्री में सामान मिल जाए मेरे को. फ्री ट्रेड का मतलब ये है कि मेरे को टैक्सेस, कस्टम्स, एक्साइज जो भी लगता है वो, या ड्यूटी जो भी लगता है वो ना देना पड़े. मूवमेंट के लिए रिस्ट्रिक्शन, बैरियर्स ना हो. सो मैन्युफैक्चरर्स हु आर प्रेसिंग फॉर ड्यूटी फ्री इंपोर्ट्स, वो भी चल रहा था. So among these, tea drinkers lobbying for product diversity has to be the answer. Yo, काफी straightforward. Moving on. Let's go. For the Maya of the classic period, who lived in southern Mexico and Central America between 250 and 900 CE. Okay. The category of persons were not coincident with human beings, as it is for us. Maya ke understanding, in the worldview of Maya, persons and humans were not the same identical thing. There was overlap, but they were not coincident. जो person है वही human है और जो human है वही person है, ऐसा नहीं था. But हमारे आज के time में हमारे लिए ऐसा है. That is, human beings were persons, but other non-human entities could be persons too. In order to explore the slippage of categories between humans and persons, I examined a very specific category of ancient Maya images. यहाँ पे slippage समझिएगा, is अगर आपको आता है तो आता है, नहीं आता है simple contextually आप समझ सकते हैं. There is overlap. In order to explore the overlap of categories between humans and persons, the author examined a very specific category of ancient Maya images found painted in scenes on ceramic vessels. Okay. I sought out the instances in which faces, some combination of eyes, nose, and mouth, are shown on inanimate objects. Inanimate objects which have eyes, nose, and mouth, he has sought out those instances और उससे अपना जो भी analysis किया. Consider my iPhone, which needs to be fed with electricity every night, swaddled in a protective bumper, and enjoys communicating with other fellow phone beings. Does it have personhood, if at all? Because it is connected to me, drawing this resource from me as an owner or source. For the Maya, who did have plenty of other communicating objects, if not smartphones, the answer was no. Non-human persons were not tethered to specific humans. Tethered matlab their entire existence was a function of the human beings that they are associated with. And they did not derive their personhood from a connection with a human. It's a profoundly democratizing way of understanding the world. Humans are not more important persons. We are just one of the many kind of persons who inhabit this world. अभी हम लिखना कम कर रहे हैं, हाथ दुख गया मेरा इसलिए लिखना कम कर रहे हैं, बट ये है माया के अंदर पर्सन एंड ह्यूमंस वर नॉट आइडेंटिकल लाइक इट इज फॉर अस. In order to identify क्या overlap होता है, the author has examined a very narrow information source, which is the scenery on ceramic vessels. Then he has gone on to give the example of iPhone. It needs to be charged every night. It is communicating with other devices. Does that make it a person? Not really, because the entire purpose of iPhone is defined if it is associated with a human. And associated with a human, in the absence of a human, the smartphone does not really have an identity of its own. So it is not a person. Additionally, when we are talking of personhood, we are not saying humans are the most special persons. Humans are not higher in the hierarchy scale compared to other persons. All persons are equal, which is also being described as a democratizing way. Democratizing is giving power to every entity, equality in terms of identification. ये चल रहा है. Okay. The Maya saw personhood as activated. When would you be termed as a person within the Maya paradigm? By experiencing certain bodily needs and through participation in certain social activities. Okay. For example, among the faced objects that I examined, persons are marked by personal requirements such as hunger, tiredness, physical closeness, and by community obligations, communication, interaction, ritual observance. In the images I examined, we see, for instance, faced objects being cradled in human arms. We also see them speaking to humans. These core elements of personhood are both turned inward, where what the body or self of a person requires, and outward, what a community expects of the person who are a part of it, underlining the reciprocal nature of community membership. ठीक है, personhood के characteristic क्या दिए हैं? एक, तो you should have certain replenishment requirements, which when you compare to the phone example that was given earlier, yes, उसको भी replenish तो करना पड़ता ही है. You need to charge your phone every day. But beyond that, there has also been a second layer where it has community obligations. You're a part of a community, और उस community के प्रति आपका कुछ जिम्मेदारी है, उस community के प्रति आपका कुछ क्या बताएं association and linkage है, which is where the iPhone example would fail. Additionally, the factor mentioned with regards to the iPhone example was its entire identity, its entire existence is tethered to a human being. तो अगर human being से associated नहीं होता तो फिर iPhone का कोई कहानी था नहीं. यहाँ पे उसने बताया there are two aspects. एक replenishment requirements है, दूसरा community obligations है. You have to be a part of a group where you are contributing or interacting or doing all sorts of things. Okay, next. Personhood was a non-binary proposition for the Maya. Non-binary का मतलब है, usually we look at things as person and not person. And these are, ये maths का idea भाई साहब, mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. या तो आप person है या तो आप person नहीं है. You cannot be both simultaneously. And everything in this world can be categorized within either person or non-person. Personhood was a non-binary proposition for Maya. Entities were able to be persons while also being something else. Just because you're a person, it does not mean you cannot be something else. It is not a binary setup कि भाई a person है या person नहीं है. आप person है, उसके साथ आप कुछ और भी हो सकते हैं. The faced objects I looked at indicate that they continue to be functional, doing what objects do. A stone implement continues to chop. An incense burner continues to do its smoky work, letting out smoke. Furthermore, the Maya visually depicted many objects in ways that indicated the material category to which they belonged. Drawings of the stone implement show that a person tool is still made of stone. ठीक है? Person tool, see this phrasing person tool. The tool is being considered as a person. Now, personally, when I was reading this, I was flummoxed by this because the requirement for being a person was you needed to have replenishment requirements, hunger, tiredness, physical closeness, वगैरह वगैरह. Let's say I'm talking of a knife, a tool के नाम पे हम knife. अब उसके पास हंगर टायर्डनेस और फिजिकल क्लोजनेस तो नहीं होगी, बट स्टिल आई मेड द लीप. चलो, शार्पनिंग इज अ रिप्लेनिशमेंट रिक्वायरमेंट, वो चल गया. बट देन एट द सेकेंड लेयर मेरे को फिर दिक्कत हो गई. अब कम्युनिटी रिक्वायरमेंट्स क्या है नाइफ की? ऐसा तो है नहीं कि नाइफ को कोई कम्युनिटी रिक्वायरमेंट्स फुलफिल करनी है. इनफैक्ट इफ आई वर टू कंपेयर इट टू स्मार्टफोन्स, स्मार्टफोन के पास फिर भी कम्युनिटी रिक्वायरमेंट्स है. अपना एक शेयर्ड डेटाबेस क्लाउड पे दिस एंड दैट सब कुछ मेंटेन कर रहा है. टूल्स तो कुछ भी नहीं कर रहे. ये सब कुछ दिमाग में आया, बट फिर यही हालत थी. अब बोल दिया पैसेज ने कि टूल है पर्सन, तो टूल है पर्सन. आई कैन नॉट से नहीं नहीं, क्वेश्चन गलत हो रखा है. जो क्वेश्चन है वो क्वेश्चन है, उसके हिसाब से काम करेंगे. सो ड्रॉइंग्स ऑफ स्टोन इम्प्लीमेंट शो दैट अ पर्सन टूल इज स्टिल मेड ऑफ स्टोन. So basically, they're saying if you're a person, you can also be a stone simultaneously. One additional complexity, the incense burner, which would have been made of clay and decorated with spiky appliques representing the sacred ceiba tree found in this region, is categorized as a person, but also as a tree. So the incense burner, which is given external beautification thingies, which now represents a ceiba tree, which is considered sacred in these regions. Now this incense burner is categorized as a person and is also categorized as a tree because it is being represented as a tree. वो ceiba tree type का. बहुत ही weird framing. At this time you also start to question yourself, गलत तो नहीं समझ रहे हैं passage, but है जो है, पढ़ लिया तो attempt तो मारेंगे. With these Maya examples, we are challenged to discard the person non-person binary that constitutes our basic ontological outlook. Achha, ontological, if you know the meaning, great. Even if you remove it from here, you try to come up with a inferred meaning, it is going to be categorization outlook. हम जब categorization करते हैं पर्सन नॉन पर्सन बाइनरी आउटलुक के साथ करते हैं, या तो ये पर्सन है या तो ये पर्सन नहीं है. यहाँ पे बोले ये पर्सन है और ये भी है, ट्री भी है और स्टोन भी है और ये भी है और ये भी है. मल्टीपल एट्रीब्यूट्स उसके साथ एसोसिएट कर दिए. The porousness of the boundaries that we have seen in Maya world points towards the possibility of living with a certain uncategorizability of the world. ठीक है, ये वर्ड के बाद तो और भी ऑन्टोलॉजिकल की मीनिंग दिख जाएगी. अच्छा, do you again थोड़ा पैसेज से बाहर है. Do you understand this is what human beings fear the most? It is not inability to do something, it is more inability to fit things within the templates that they have already created. जो अपने कैट के मॉक या क्वांट का क्वेश्चन करते हो दिक्कत नहीं आती, अरे इसमें फॉर्मूला क्यों नहीं फिट हो रहा है, क्योंकि तुमने टेम्पलेट बना लिया, अब उसी के हिसाब से फिट करना है तो दिक्कत हो जाती है. बट है फन. Let's get to individual questions. Which one of the following, if true, would not undermine the democratizing potential of classic Maya worldview? Democratizing potential of classic Maya worldview was हर चीज को बराबर बराबर ट्रीट कर रहे हैं, पर्सन्स को भी। ह्यूमंस आर नॉट मोर इंपॉर्टेंट पर्सन्स, एवरीवन इज इक्वल पर्सन्स। ठीक है। ऑप्शन ए। अच्छा, ये भी देखना इस क्वेश्चन के अंदर भी, वुड नॉट अंडरमाइन बेसिकली ट्रांसलेट्स इनटू falls in line with or is agreeable to the idea. Pehla, they believed that animals like cats and dogs that live in proximity to humans have a more clearly articulated personhood. अब ये देखो, if they have a more clearly articulated personhood, they are being placed at a higher pedestal compared to humans or compared to whatever, but they have a more clearly articulated personhood. इक्वालिटी वाली बात जा रही है, अच्छा नहीं लग रहा, बट अभी ए है, रहने देते हैं। ए एंड बी के अंदर, दे अंडरस्टूड द स्टोन इम्प्लीमेंट एंड इंसेंस बर्नर इन अ प्योरली ह्यूमन फॉर्म। डिड दे अंडरस्टैंड द स्टोन इम्प्लीमेंट एंड इंसेंस बर्नर इन अ प्योरली ह्यूमन फॉर्म? नॉट रियली। पैसेज के अंदर बता रखा है अ स्टोन, अ पर्सन टूल इज स्टिल मेड ऑफ स्टोन, और द इंसेंस बर्नर was also understood in the form of a tree. So between A and B, between A and B, I would rather reject B, despite A having its challenges. I would rather reject B. Option C, they depicted their human healers with physical attributes of local medicinal plants. अच्छा, अब देखना, A के अंदर था dogs and cats at a higher pedestal compared to other persons. C के अंदर था humans और plants को similarly represent कर रहे हैं, ह्यूमन हीलर्स विद फिजिकल एट्रीब्यूट्स ऑफ लोकल मेडिसिनल प्लांट्स सिमिलरली रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं। इक्वालिटी का आइडिया इज बीइंग पुश्ड ग्रेटर इन सी, देयरफॉर बिटवीन सी एंड ए, सी सर्वाइव्स। अब सी और डी, while they believed in personhood of objects and plants, they did not believe in personhood of rivers and animals. Okay, while this is equal unequal, can you see objects and plants are being placed at a higher pedestal than rivers and animals? ये लोग पर्सन है, ये लोग पर्सन नहीं है। यस, उनके हिसाब से पर्सनहुड डेफिनेशन के अपने अपने क्राइटेरिया थे, अपने अपने फैक्टर्स थे, बट डेमोक्रेटाइजिंग पोटेंशियल इज पॉइंटिंग मोर टुवर्ड्स इक्वालिटी। डी इज मोर इनइक्वालिटी हाईलाइट कर रहा है। ऑब्जेक्ट्स और प्लांट्स को अलग ट्रीटमेंट मिलती है, रिवर्स और एनिमल्स को अलग ट्रीटमेंट मिलती है। इसके चक्कर में सी और डी में से डी भी गया, वी आर लेफ्ट विथ ऑप्शन सी, दैट विल बी द आंसर। Question 14. Which one of the following best explains the additional complexity that the example of the incense burner illustrates regarding personhood of the classic Maya? At that time, we were discussing non-binary personhood. Non-binary personhood or non-binary paradigm of viewing personhood. The example provides an exception to the non-binary understanding of personhood that the passage had hitherto established. The example, was it an exception or was it an example? Was it an example that showed that Maya did not limit their personhood paradigm to be a binary idea? ऐसा नहीं है कि या तो आप पर्सन है या तो आप पर्सन नहीं है, और एक बार आप पर्सन हो गए तब आप कुछ और नहीं हो सकते। It is not an exception. It is not a unique case that is being referenced here. It is more, देखो, इंसेंस बर्नर को तो ट्री भी मान रहे थे, पर्सन भी मान रहे थे, दोनों चल रहा था। Despite it not in our definition of the world, we don't consider incense burners to be persons. We don't consider them to be trees. वो भाई लोग incense burner, tree, person सब कुछ मान रहे उसको। Okay, भी the example adds a new layer to the non-binary understanding of personhood by bringing in a third category that shares a similar relation with the previous two. Okay. Between A and B, hopefully you will realize B remains. The example adds a new layer to the non-binary understanding of personhood, which was being discussed at the time, bringing in a third category that shares a similar relation with the previous two. Similar relation with the previous two, the categorizations earlier were person, non-person, And the new categorization that we have been given here is tree and non-tree. Tree and non-tree. Either you are a tree or you are not a tree. पर भाई ने वहां पे भी थोड़ा सा हेजी करके नेबुलस करके अपना कहानी चला दिया. भाई इंसेंस बर्नर भी ट्री है, which shares a similar relation with the previous two. Similar relation का मतलब यहाँ पे ये है because it was complementary in nature, collectively exhaustive. Previously ऐसा लग रहा था collectively exhaustive है, लेकिन अब overlap आ रहा. Tree, non-tree, that sort of new layer has been added between A and B. B survives. C देखते हैं. The example adds a new layer to non-binary understanding of personhood by bringing in a third category that shares a dissimilar relation with the previous two. If it was sharing a dissimilar relation with the previous two, third category that was sharing a dissimilar relation with the previous two, what would happen? It would not necessarily, if it was a not dissimilar relation with the previous two, it would not be a new layer. It would not be a new layer to non-binary understanding. It would be a new classification altogether. अगर हम बोल रहे हैं कि odd numbers होते हैं 1, 3, 5 and even numbers होते हैं 2, 4, 6. अब उसके बाद हम बोल रहे हैं classification of perfect squares. Perfect squares. Is this हम 1, 3, 5 में से कुछ पकड़ रहे हैं या 2, 4, 6 में से कुछ पकड़ रहे हैं, या कहानी में और काम कर रहे हैं, या हम कुछ और ही डिस्क्रिप्शन कर रहे हैं साथ के साथ? वैसे इसको भी परफेक्ट स्क्वायर और नॉन परफेक्ट स्क्वायर के तरीके से तोड़ दिया जाए तो फिर सिमिलर क्लासिफिकेशन में आ जाएगा. परफेक्ट स्क्वायर और नॉन परफेक्ट स्क्वायर में तोड़ जाए तो सिमिलर क्लासिफिकेशन स्टाइल में आ जाएगा. ऑड, इवन, परफेक्ट स्क्वायर, नॉन परफेक्ट स्क्वायर, चल जाएगा काम. तो हम और कैसे पकड़े? अच्छा, इनफैक्ट ओहो, इससे तो एक और ही आइडिया आ गया. given that the earlier classification or the earlier categories that were defined, earlier classification and earlier categories that were defined was simply binary in nature, can you see every categorization that you engage in can be broken down in binary terms? Either you're in the group or you're out of the group. तो similar relation तो रहेगा ही. Anyway, यहाँ पे shares a dissimilar relation with the previous two. हट जाना चाहिए. B and C में B survives. D is absolutely useless. Establishing the porosity of the divine and the profane. ये divine and the profane के चक्कर में ये तो अलग ही दुनिया है. हट गया. This is what remains. Should be the answer. Question 15. On the basis of the passage, which one of the following worldviews can be inferred to be closest to that of the classic Maya? A tribe that perceives its utensils as person utensils in light of their functionality and bodily needs. Bodily needs अगर रहता तब तो अच्छी बात है. But in light of their functionality, इसका तो डायरेक्ट एग्जांपल दिया था आईफोन से रिलेटेड. जस्ट बिकॉज फंक्शनैलिटी चल रहा है ना, लाइट, जस्ट बिकॉज इट इज सर्विंग सम पर्पस फॉर अस, उसके चक्कर में किसी चीज को पर्सनहुड ग्रांट नहीं किया जा रहा है. पर्सनहुड ग्रांट किया जा रहा है 2 फैक्टर्स से. एक इनफैक्ट एक नेगेटिव फैक्टर और 2 पॉजिटिव फैक्टर्स. नेगेटिव फैक्टर यही है, ह्यूमन बीइंग से टेदर्ड नहीं होना चाहिए. दूसरा, इंडिविजुअल रिक्वायरमेंट्स होनी चाहिए, रिप्लेनिशमेंट रिक्वायरमेंट्स होनी चाहिए. तीसरा, कम्युनिटी ऑब्लिगेशंस होनी चाहिए. तो जब फंक्शनैलिटी बोल दिया, दिस इज इन डायरेक्ट कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन ऑफ व्हाट इज गिवन इन द पैसेज. बट अभी ए है, रिजेक्ट नहीं करते. ऑप्शन बी, द ट्राइब दैट परसीव्स इट्स हंटिंग वेपन्स एज सेक्रेड पर्सन आर्टिफैक्ट्स बिकॉज ऑफ इट्स सिग्निफिकेंस टू इट्स सर्वाइवल. Okay, between A and B, what survives? A survives for the simple reason, hunting weapons as sacred person artifacts. एक तो sacred का एंगल एक्स्ट्रा आ गया, and because of their utility, their personhood is being granted, their personhood is being granted because of their significance to survival. ना ये तो लाइट ही हो गया. A futuristic society that perceives robots to be persons as well as robots because of their similarity to humans. Again, personhood is not granted because of how similar you are to humans. The attributes required are replenishment requirements, which robots will fulfill, and community obligations, which most likely robots would also fulfill. But यहाँ पे कहानी जो दी है कि भाई बिकॉज दे आर सिमिलर टू ह्यूमंस इसलिए पर्सनहुड ग्रांट कर देंगे, ये भी नहीं चल रहा. सी भी गया. ध्यान देना, फंक्शनैलिटी एंड बॉडीली नीड्स बोला था, सी के अंदर सिमिलैरिटी टू ह्यूमंस बोला था. दोनों में गड़बड़ी है, बट सी ज्यादा गलत है. डी, a tribe that perceives plants as person plants because they form an ecosystem and are marked by needs of nutrition. बहुत ही बढ़िया. Between A and D, can you see D is fulfilling both those criteria? They form an ecosystem, community needs, and marked by needs of nutrition, replenishment needs. दोनों attribute आ गए, कुछ violate भी नहीं कर रहा. This would be correct. Next question, last question within RCs. Which one of the following is true about the classic Maya, which would invalidate the purpose of the iPhone example in the passage? The purpose of the iPhone example in the passage was ये दिखाना personhood is not granted on account of your utility or usefulness to humans. Personhood उसके चक्कर में नहीं grant हो रहा. Let's say option A, the clay incense burner with spiky appliques was categorized only as a person and not as a tree by classic Maya. This doesn't really, it is not even in relation to the iPhone example. This was mentioned in the last paragraph talking about non-binary understanding. iPhone example was to show कि just because you serve a purpose, you don't turn into a person. तो बहुत ही ज्यादा घटिया है ये, बट पहला ऑप्शन है सर्वाइव करेगा. Classic Maya songs represent both humans and non-living objects as characters, talking and interacting with each other. Acha. Between A and B, can I say A is completely out of whack, has to be rejected? B bhi dekhna. Just because in classic Maya songs represent both humans and non-living objects as characters or persons, talking and interacting with each other, does that invalidate the purpose of the iPhone example? The purpose of the iPhone example was to show personhood is not granted on account of utility to humans. Okay. But between A and B, B survives. B and C. Unlike modern societies equipped with mobile phones, the classic Maya did not have any communicating objects. फिर से, was the idea here कि उनके पास communicating devices है कि नहीं? ये तो था ही नहीं. The purpose of the iPhone example was utility की बात है कि नहीं. अब हम बोर भी हो गए. B और D हटाओ. मस्त D है. The personhood of the incense burner and the stone chopper was a function of their usefulness to humans. नहीं, ये बात नहीं है. बिल्कुल ये बात नहीं है. अगर आप यूजफुल है तो आप चलेंगे. तो iPhone example invalidate the purpose, invalidate the example itself. If iPhone would be considered a person in the Maya paradigm, and that will be the end of all the RCs. ये समझना, पैसेज 4 को समझते वक्त आखिरी में या इवन ड्यूरिंग द सेकंड पैराग्राफ देयर वर पॉइंट्स ऑफ कंटेंशन दैट आई डिड नॉट कंप्लीटली अंडरस्टैंड एंड आई स्टिल डोंट अंडरस्टैंड, बट दैट डज नॉट मीन कि उस पैसेज के अंदर आंसर नहीं निकाले जा सकते. आंसर तो निकल जाएंगे, आंसर तो प्यार से निकल जाएंगे. ओके. Okay, let's look at this parajumble now. In the central nervous system of other animal species, such a comprehensive regeneration of neurons has not yet been proven beyond doubt. Biologists from the University of Beirut have discovered a uniquely rapid form of regeneration in injured neurons and their function in the central nervous system of zebrafish. At this time, ये hopefully capture हो रहा होगा. 1 is going to come after 2. Because here it says other animal species, and here a specific animal has been mentioned, zebrafish. They studied the Mothner cells, which are solely responsible for escape behavior of the fish and previously regarded as incapable of regeneration. The they here is a link to biologists from the University of Beirut. अच्छा, ये बेरूत मेरे को पता नहीं, आई नो बेरूट, ये जगह हम जानते हैं, शायद उसका ऑल्टरनेटिव स्पेलिंग होगा, बट जो भी है, they studied the Mothner cells, which are solely responsible for escape behavior of the fish, zebrafish के reference में, and previously regarded as incapable of regeneration, which means 2-3 का एक pair बन गया. However, their ability to regenerate, regeneration से link, crucially depends on the location of the injury. Okay. Now, previously it was stated they were regarded as incapable of regeneration. And now this is an alternative idea, contradiction. However, their ability to regenerate crucially depends on the location of the injury. 2, 3, 4 ban gaya. And now that we have talked about zebrafish all together, now going to talk about other animal species makes sense. So the order here will be 2, 3, 4, 1. That will be the answer. Yo. Okay, moving on. Question 18, misfit. There is a dark side to academic research, especially in India, and in its center is the phenomenon of predatory journals. Okay, but in truth, as long as you pay, you can get anything published. In look and feel, thus, they are exactly like any reputed journal. They claim to be indexed in the most influential databases, say they possess editorial boards that comprise top scientists and researchers, and claim to have a rigorous peer review structure. Yeah, ab 1 or 3 ka hopefully link dikh raha ho. When you're calling something predatory journals, then the follow-up line about they claim to be indexed in the most influential databases, say they possess editorial boards, not that they are indexed in most influential databases, they possess editorial boards. These are simply claims that they make, which are not, upon which the author or the writer is casting aspersions. वो बोलते हैं ऐसा, वो बोलते हैं ऐसा, वैसा काम चल रहा है. And claim to have a rigorous peer review structure. Okay. अब 4 के बाद, सॉरी 1-3 कर दिया हमने, सॉरी 1-4 4 के बाद 3 का ऑर्डरिंग अच्छा लगता है. In look and feel, thus, they are exactly like any reputed journal. But given the author's disdain and disparaging remarks towards these journals, calling them predatory in the first line itself, the next line has to be an objection to. The next line has to be an objection to this. The two lines that are available are 2 or 5. 1, 4, 3, 2, with 5 being the odd one out, or 1, 4, 3, 5, with 2 being the odd one out. यही कहानी रहेगी. They claim to be in look and feel, thus they are exactly like any reputed journal. But in truth, as long as you pay, you can get anything published. Ordering makes sense. Odd one out would be 5. 5 अभी तक read नहीं किया है, एक बार 5 देखते हैं. But a large section of researchers and scientists across the world are at the receiving end of nothing short of an academic publishing scam. थ्री के बाद 4 बनता है क्या? 3 के बाद 5 बनता है क्या? ध्यान देना, in the first 3 lines, 1, 4, 3, the focus has been the journals themselves. If the fifth statement had been the journals do nothing more than scam a large section of researchers and scientists across the world, then 5 would still make sense. The fact that in statement 5, the karta of the statement, the focus of the or the doer of the statement has changed to researchers and scientists, that makes it a little unsuitable for coming after 3, and therefore between these two choices 1 4 3 2 makes more sense. 5 should be the odd one out. Yo. Okay. The second para jumble. The work is more than the text, and the text only takes on life when it is realized, and furthermore, the realization is by no means independent of the individual disposition of the reader. The convergence of text and reader brings the literary work into existence, and this convergence is not to be identified either with the reality of the text or with the individual disposition of the reader. अच्छा, fun thing, can you see 2-1 का पेयर बनता है? इज्जत से बोल रहा है टेक्स्ट के टर्म्स में नहीं समझना है रिटन वर्क्स को, और इंडिविजुअल डिस्पोजिशन के टर्म्स में नहीं समझना है. एंड वन इज सेइंग द टेक्स्ट ओनली टेक्स ऑन लाइफ व्हेन इट इज रियलाइज्ड. इससे ज्यादा है बट उतना भी नहीं है जितना इंडिविजुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग या इंडिविजुअल इंटरप्रिटेशन ही है. 2 के बाद 1 का ऑर्डर, 2 के बाद 1 का लोकेशन अच्छा है. फ्रॉम दिस पोलैरिटी it follows that the literary work cannot be completely identical with the text or with the realization of the text, but in fact must lie halfway between the two. और अब challenge आता है यार, when they're saying in fact must lie halfway between the two, 3-1 का भी पेयर अच्छा लगता है. The work is more than the text, for the text only takes on life when it is realized, and furthermore the realization is by no means independent of the individual disposition of the reader. टेक्स्ट से ज्यादा इंडिविजुअल डिस्पोजिशन ऑफ द रीडर के साथ मिक्स करके लाइक बन रहा है उसका फाइनल इंपैक्ट. ये 3 के बाद भी 1 का सेटिंग अच्छा लग रहा है. अब इसके बाद 4, द लिटरेरी वर्क हैज 2 poles which we might call the artistic and the aesthetic. The artistic refers to the text created by the author, and the aesthetic to the realization accomplished by the reader. Out of these lines, although we should never be hunting for the start, मुंह पे मार रहा है ना 4 से चालू होगा, कहानी तो 4 से चालू होगा. So now we will and ये भी पता चल रहा है, we have basically 2 options now, either 4-3-2-1 और 4-2-3-1. इन्हीं दोनों विकल्पों पे खेलना है. These are the 2 options that we have, despite it being a TETA question. These are the 2 options that we are working with. अच्छा, अब this is a question that I had gotten wrong. हमने यहाँ पे जुगाड़ या एरर प्रोन आइडिया ये लगाया, 2 poles की बात निकाली, और फिर from this polarity it follows that the literary work cannot be completely identical with the text. poles बोल दिया, polarity बोल दी, तो 4-3 का ग्रुपिंग होगा, 4-3-2-1 ही बन रहा होगा. हमने ये निकाला, but of course this is erroneous. This was not the answer. The answer is 4-2-3-1. उसके अंदर पकड़ना बस ये था, ये देखो 3 के बाद 2 is an unnecessary repetition. From this polarity, it follows that the literary work cannot be completely identical with the text or with the realization of the text, but in fact must lie halfway between the two. आपने बोल दिया उन दोनों के बीच में रहेगा. उसके बाद अब आप 2 का लाइन पढ़िए. The convergence of text and reader brings the literary work into existence, and this convergence is not to be identified either with the reality of the text or with the individual disposition of the reader. Basically, you're saying the same thing all over again. You're saying the same thing all over again. This is a repetition without adding value to the discussion, जिसके चक्कर में 3 के बाद 2 is a problem situation. 3 के बाद 2 is a problem situation. इनफैक्ट यहाँ पे चैलेंज ये भी आ रहेगा, मेरे लिए पर्सनली चैलेंज ये भी आएगा. हमने जब पढ़ना चालू किया था ना, 2-1 लगा था मेरे को, ये बन गया, तो अब मेरे को 4-3 आखिरी में आएगा या 4-3 शुरुआत में आएगा, इसका चैलेंज करना था. 4-3 मेरे को दिख रहा था शुरुआत में ही होना चाहिए, तो मस्त 4 3 2 1 मारा और बढ़ गए। एडिशनली ये समझो, बाय द टाइम वी रीच पैराजम्बल्स, और एटलीस्ट व्हेन आई रीच पैराजम्बल्स, तब तक अपने आंसर 4 3 2 1 नहीं, आंसर 4 2 3 1 है। आंसर 4 2 3 1 है। क्या बात कर रहे हो? तो मेरे नंबर बढ़ जाएंगे। दिस इज क्वेश्चन नंबर 19। 4 3 2 1 ही आंसर, हम तो खुश हो गए। अच्छा, बढ़िया है। हम तो अपने आप को कन्विंस कर चुके थे 4 2 3 1 होना चाहिए इसके अंदर। बस ठीक है। आंसर गलत है। जो भी है, जहां से भी हम देख रहे थे 4 2 3 1 दिया हुआ था वहां पे, तो जो भी हालत है, हम मेरे को जो रीजन आया हमने बता दिया, बाकी हमने अपना आंसर वांसर निकालने के बाद मैच किया था, तो मैच नहीं कर रहा था, इसलिए दिक्कत थी। ठीक है, अपने नंबर बढ़ गए यार, 3 नंबर बढ़ गए, बहुत खुशी। 4 3 2 1, दिस इज द आंसर। यो, दिस इज ऑफ कोर्स रॉन्ग, ये तो गलत बात है। 2 1 का पैर दिख रहा था साफ साफ। अलग ही खुशियां भाई, अलग ही खुशियां, तुम नहीं समझ सकते। अंग्रेजी में नंबर बढ़ना बहुत, अंग्रेजी में नंबर बढ़ना हमारे लिए इतना अच्छा इसलिए ना कि कौन डीआई तो हम खेल लेंगे, अंग्रेजी के अंदर तो लीड बनती है दुनिया से। ओके, क्वेश्चन 5। इट इज अनदर, सॉरी, क्वेश्चन 20, मिसफिट्स अगेन। 5 स्टेटमेंट्स में से गेम देखना है। The legal status of resources mined in space remains ambiguous. And while the market for asteroid minerals is currently non-existent, this is likely to change as technical hurdles diminish. ठीक है? Legal status of resources mined in space. स्पेस के अंदर किसकी ओनरशिप है, किसका डोमिनियन है, all of that is uh, all of that is up in the air. There isn't a precise framework of laws that determines it right now. Outer space is a commons, and all of it is open for exploration. However, space law developed in the 50s and 60s is state centric and arguably ill suited to a commercial future. When they say state centric here, they do, भारत के अंदर स्टेट का जब स्टेट बोलते हैं ना, तब उत्तर प्रदेश एंड मध्य प्रदेश एंड महाराष्ट्र एंड राजस्थान ये आ रहा होता है। स्टेट हियर मींस गवर्नमेंट सेंट्रिक, the ownership and the rights are conferred to the government here. State centric का मतलब गवर्नमेंट है। Laws adopted by the US and Luxembourg are first steps, but they only protect firms from competing claims by their compatriots. A Chinese company will not be bound by US law. ठीक है? Critics say that US is conferring rights that it has no authority to confer. Russia in particular has condemned this, citing the US disrespect for international law. ठीक है? At issue now is commercial activity, as private firms, rather than nation states, look to space for profit. Can we see 2 और 5 का तो अच्छा पेयरिंग बन रहा है। 2 और 5 का अच्छा पेयरिंग बन रहा है। We are saying in 50s and 60s, whatever space law was developed, it was government centric and arguably ill suited to a commercial future. So in the next line, you are going to talk of why it is ill suited. Statement 5 is a good reason why it is ill suited. At issue now is commercial activity, as private firms rather than nation states look to space for profit. Private firms, key identifier. Next, 1 3 रहेगा या 3 1 रहेगा? 1 3 रहेगा या 3 1 रहेगा, ये नहीं पता, बट इतना गारंटी हो गया था 4 बाहर रहेगा। 2-5 का पेयरिंग अच्छा दिख जाता है. उसके बाद the legal status of resources mined in the space remains ambiguous, and while the market for asteroid minerals is currently non-existent, this is likely to change as technical hurdles diminish. Laws adopted by US and Luxembourg are first steps, but they only protect firms from competing claims by their compatriots. My personal preference is 2-5-3-1 and 4 being the odd one out. 4 being the odd one out. In either case, 4 बाहर है, इस पे किसी को लड़ाई नहीं होगी, क्योंकि 4 is not talking about ownership of resources or ownership of mineral resources in outer space. 4 is talking about the acrimonious relationship between Russia and US, about US passing some laws that are not in line with what Russia wanted. Yes. 2-5-3-1 है या 2-5-1-3 है, नहीं पता. 4 पक्के से पता चल रहा है. 2-5 का पेयरिंग शुरुआत में रहेगा, ये भी पक्के से पता चल रहा है. आगे बढ़े. ओके. ये क्वांट की क्लास नहीं है, मीत एन नहीं. क्वांट में अलग बिहेवियर पैटर्न है, यहाँ पे अलग बिहेवियर पैटर्न है. ठीक है. This is one of the easiest questions. A popular response is the exhortation to plant more trees. It seems all but certain that global warming will go well above 2 degrees. Quite how high, no one knows yet. Statement 2 is a cry for help of sorts. भाई ग्लोबल वार्मिंग बहुत बढ़ने वाली है यार, जिंदगी में तबाहियां मच जाएंगी. And 1 is a response to that. One is a response to that. A popular response is exhortation to plant. ज्यादा पेड़ लगाओ, ज्यादा पेड़ लगाओ. अच्छा. Why do we have this exhortation to plant more trees? Ideally should be the next line. Burning them releases it, which is why the scale of forest fires in the Amazon basin last year garnered headlines. नहीं अच्छा लग रहा है. This is because trees sequester carbon by absorbing carbon dioxide. 1 के बाद 4 आ जाएगा, and burning them releases it. Them here is in reference to trees. It here is in reference to carbon dioxide. So 3 आ जाएगा. The only number left is 2. So 2, 1, 4, 3. यही रहेगा order. Yo. Okay. Question 22. Foreign peacekeepers often exist in a bubble in the poor communities in which they are deployed. They live in posh compounds, drive fancy vehicles, and distance themselves from locals. This may be partially justified as they are outsiders, living in constant fear, performing a job that is emotionally draining. There are justifiable reasons why they maintain their distance from the locals. But they are often despised by the locals, and many would like them to leave. A better solution would be bottom-up peace building, which would involve their spending more time working with communities, understanding their grievances, and earning their trust rather than only meeting government officials. ठीक है. Foreign peacekeepers के लिए बोला है, the way it is currently set up, they maintain distance with the general population, because of which there is acrimony from the population side. In order to resolve this acrimony, it would be better if instead of working on a top-down approach, they worked on a bottom-up approach where they worked with the communities instead of simply meeting with government officials. Basic summary है. चलो अब options देखें. Peacekeeping forces in foreign countries have tended to be aloof for valid reasons. Aloof for valid reasons, but would be more effective if they worked more closely with local communities. ठीक है. Aloof से ज्यादा they are apart, but ठीक है चलेगा. Would be more effective if they worked more closely with local communities instead of with government officials. ऐसी बातें रहती तो अच्छा लगता, but option A रिजेक्ट तो कर नहीं सकते. Option B. extravagant lifestyles and an aloof attitude among the foreigners working as peacekeepers in poor countries have justifiably made them होना चाहिए have justifiably made them the target of local anger. देखो एक तो उनकी लाइफस्टाइल एक्सट्रावेगेंट है, ये यहां से पता चल रहा है, पॉश कॉम्पाउंड्स, ड्राइविंग फैंसी व्हीकल्स, aloof attitude, maintaining distance with the locals, यहां से आ रहा है, have justifiably made them target of local anger. While this is true, this is missing out on the critical part. The second part of the passage is about a recommendation of how this problem can be fixed. B is only talking of the problem. B is not incorrect, but B is not as good as A. A is better because it is talking of the problem, the distance between the peacekeepers and the local population, and also giving a potential solution as the passage had done. So between A and B, B is eliminated. C, peacekeeping duties would be more effectively performed by local residents given their better understanding, knowledge, and rapport with their own communities. तो इज्जत से फॉरेन पीस कीपर्स को क्या ठीक करना चाहिए का रिकमेंडेशन नहीं है, उनको रिप्लेस ही कर दिया पूरा. पीस कीपिंग ड्यूटीज लोकल से ही करा लो, फॉरेन वाले लोग तो यूजलेस हैं, उनसे कुछ नहीं होना, विच इज ऑफ कोर्स नॉट बीइंग रिकमेंडेड इन द पैसेज. ये तो हटा. B, environment in poor countries has tended to make foreign peacekeeping forces live in enclaves, but it is time to change the scenario. Okay. Live in enclaves, I can still go ahead and extend this idea to away from the population, but it is time to change the scenario. ये बड़ा अल्टीमेटम टाइप का लग रहा है, and not with a क्या बताएं, इंटेंट ऑफ फिक्सिंग द प्रॉब्लम, मोर विथ एन इंटेंट, बदलाव का समय आ गया है, ऐसा टाइप का स्टेटमेंट है, विच इज नॉट व्हाट द ऑथर इज सेइंग. द ऑथर इज गिविंग अ कॉन्क्रीट सजेशन. भाई, instead of working with government officials alone, work with the communities. That way the objective would be achieved better, and which is referenced in A, not referenced in D. So between A and D, D is also cancelled. Answer here will be A. Next question. McGurk and MacDonald, 1976. अच्छा, this style of writing, ये समझिएगा, this is especially true for literature based pieces, and even within them more for researches that have been done or experiments that have been published. उसके लिए ये writing style रहती है. Name of the author followed by the year. Reported a powerful multi-sensory illusion occurring with audio-visual speech. They recorded a voice articulating a constant ba, 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 and dubbed it with a face articulating another consonant ga, ga, ga. Even though the acoustic speech signal was well recognized alone, मतलब जब सिर्फ साउंड सुनाया गया टेस्ट सब्जेक्ट्स को, वो बा बा ही सुन रहे थे. It was heard as another consonant after dubbing with the incongruent visual speech, that is da, da, da. ध्यान देना, अब पैसेज का नहीं, ऐसे ही सुनना. बा में अपर लिप और लोअर लिप करता है टच, गा गा में नहीं करता है. तो अब जब आप गा गा कर रहा है आदमी और बा आ रहा है, मिक्स होके मस्त डा बन गया. एक बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग था पढ़ने में, बट ऑफ कोर्स अभी सिर्फ समरी का आंसर मार्क करना है, तो आगे बढ़ते हैं. द इल्यूजन टर्म्ड एज द मगर्क इफेक्ट, और ये बहुत बुरा लगा मेरे को पढ़ के. भाई रिसर्च दोनों लड़कों ने करी, बट इफेक्ट एक ही बंदे के नाम पे आया. ठीक है, was termed as the McGurk effect, has been replicated many times. Okay, when it comes to researches, if it has been replicated, it lends credence to the results. And it has marked an abundance of research. The reason for the great impact is that this is a striking demonstration of multi-sensory integration. This is an example of how we capture information by multiple senses simultaneously. ऐसा नहीं कि visual input and auditory input and olfactory input, all these inputs are treated separately. We are capturing input, multiple inputs at the same time with the senses that we have, where the auditory and the visual information is merged into a unified integrated concept. Okay. This is the reason why it is popular, because it gives an example of multi-sensory input and the processed information coming out as one. Okay. Option A, the McGurk effect, which is a demonstration of multi-sensory integration, has been replicated many times. सही है, कोई दिक्कत नहीं. Visual speech mismatched with auditory speech can result in perception of an entirely different message. This illusion is known as the McGurk effect. ठीक है? Between A and B, both of them are of course not complete. Both of them are of course not complete, because why McGurk effect is so awesome has not been mentioned in both of them. Between A and B, which one is better, people? Between A and B, which one is better? ध्यान देना, McGurk effect was not multi-sensory integration का demonstration. It is serving as a demonstration for multi-sensory integration. Objective of the McGurk effect is not McGurk effect was limited to क्या बताएं, ऑडिटरी और विजुअल इनपुट. दीज वर द टू स्पेसिफिक इनपुट्स. जब आपके पास आए और आप उसको इंटीग्रेट करने के बाद कुछ नया इल्यूजन पा रहे हैं, दैट वाज McGurk इफेक्ट. हियर मल्टी सेंसरी इंटीग्रेशन, स्पेसिफिक्स में नहीं जा रहा, यहाँ पे ऑडिटरी स्पीच, विजुअल स्पीच, ये दोनों इनपुट स्पेसिफिकली बताए हैं. बिटवीन बी एंड सी, बिटवीन ए एंड बी, McGurk इफेक्ट का ज्यादा अच्छा डिस्क्रिप्शन बी में. ए इज नॉट इनकरेक्ट, बट ए के अंदर वो स्पेसिफाई नहीं किया. दोनों के अंदर दिक्कत ये है कि भाई इट इज इंपॉर्टेंट बिकॉज दिस इज अ डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन ऑफ मल्टी सेंसरी इंटीग्रेशन. ये सब बातें. इनफैक्ट ए के अंदर और अच्छी बात है, इट हैज बीन रेप्लिकेटेड मेनी टाइम्स, बट नहीं दे रखा तो नहीं दे रखा, बी चल रहा है अभी. Between A and B, B is better. C. C. When the auditory speech signal does not match the visual speech movements, the acoustic speech signal is confusing and integration of the two is imperfect. सब कुछ बढ़िया है यहाँ पे, ये दिक्कत है. When the auditory speech signal does not match the visual speech movements. ये समझ रहे हैं? कहानी बिल्कुल सही बात है. Auditory speech signal does not match the visual speech movement. The acoustic speech signal is confusing. Acoustic speech signal is not confusing. Upon integrating both these information points, then the result that you get is imperfect, or the result that you get is an illusion. The input itself is not confusing. Input by itself is not confusing. The integration of the inputs is giving me a result that is not accurate. So between B and C, C gets eliminated because of the factual inaccuracy. Next is when the quality of auditory information is poor, the visual information wins over auditory information. अच्छा, एक तो दोनों में से विक्ट्री की बात नहीं थी, दोनों के इंटीग्रेशन के बाद क्या एरर बन रहा है उसकी बात थी. Additionally, the quality of auditory information is poor. It is not about the quality of the auditory information. It is more contradictory information being supplied by sound and by eyesight. Then what do we get? यहाँ पे उसको पुअर बोल दिया, which is a unfair characterization. Also visual information wins over auditory information. ऐसा तो कुछ बताया ही नहीं है पैसेज के अंदर. B भी गया. What we are left with is B. That should be the answer. Last question. ये भी मेरा गलत है. यही मेरा गलत है अब तो. मेरे को पहले लगा था 2 है, बट अब मेरा एक ही गलत है. हम खुश हैं. मतलब VA के अंदर. Developing countries are becoming hotbeds of business innovation in much the same way as Japan did from 1950s onwards. They are reinventing systems of production and distribution and experimenting with entirely new business models. ध्यान देना, डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज के अंदर चेंजेस क्या क्या है? प्रोडक्शन और डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम्स बदल रहे हैं और न्यू बिजनेस मॉडल्स ला रहे हैं. Why are countries that were until recently associated with cheap hands, cheap labor, now becoming leaders in innovation? Driven by a mixture of ambition and fear, they are relentlessly climbing up the value chain. Emerging market champions have not only proved highly competitive in their own backyards, they are also going global themselves. Their innovation and growth has been such that they are not just becoming good enough or big enough within their own geographical boundaries, they are also going global. दुनिया में भी फैल रहे. तो बहुत ही बढ़िया. अब पढ़ते हैं. मेरा देखना दिक्कत क्या हुई. A. Production and distribution models are going through rapid innovations worldwide as developed countries are being challenged by their earlier suppliers from the developing world. अच्छा, ए के अंदर challenges बता रहे, क्या क्या आइडेंटिफाई किए. सिर्फ प्रोडक्शन एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन मॉडल की बात बोली, न्यू बिजनेस मॉडल की बात नहीं बोली. Rapid are going through rapid innovations worldwide. Nahi, the passage is talking of rapid innovations happening in developing countries only. And developed countries are being challenged by their earlier suppliers. Suppliers generic term बोल दिया, जबकि suppliers of labor होना चाहिए, associated with cheap hands की बात थी. So there are these challenges with option A. Option B. Competition has driven emerging economies, once suppliers of cheap labor, to become innovators of business models that have enabled them to move up the value chain and go global. B के साथ competition has driven, competition भी था, मतलब competition has driven नहीं था, ambition and fear था, which you can क्या बताएं extend करके understand it as competition चलेगा. One supplier of cheap labors, this is a point where it wins over A, to become innovators of business models. अब business models बोला, यहाँ पे production और distribution models था, यहाँ पे business models बोला, ठीक है, that have enabled them to move up the value chain and go global. बहुत ही बढ़िया, ये भी अच्छा है. A और B में B better, A और B में B better, क्योंकि A के अंदर factually inaccurate चीजें थी, B के अंदर ये competition मेरे को challenge दे रहा है. बट देखते हैं आगे, सिर्फ बिजनेस मॉडल बोला है, प्रोडक्शन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन बोला नहीं है. Innovations in production and distribution are helping emerging economies compete with countries to which they once supplied cheap labor. Now, if I'm comparing B and C, हम अपने दिमाग का बताते हैं. If I'm comparing B and C, मेरे दिमाग में this idea was heavy. बिजनेस मॉडल्स एक ही बार बोला है, यहाँ पे प्रोडक्शन और डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ज्यादा कर दिया है. दे आर हेल्पिंग द इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमीज compete with countries to which they once supplied cheap labor. सही बात है, हेल्पिंग इट टू compete there. दो मॉडल्स की बात एक्स्ट्रा करी, यहाँ पे सिर्फ बिजनेस मॉडल बोला है, इसीलिए बी और सी में सी अच्छा, बी गंदा. आई विल कम बैक टू क्या एरर है मेरे थॉट प्रोसेस में. B outright reject हो गया. Developing countries are being forced to invent. Nobody is forcing them to invent. They're choosing to invent because it is potentially beneficial to them. तो D तो गंदा है ही, हट गया. और फिर हमने आंसर C मारा. Of course C is incorrect, क्योंकि अब इसके साथ challenges देखना चालू करते हैं. Innovation in production and distribution. अच्छा, production and distribution are helping emerging economies compete with countries to which they once supplied cheap labor. This is propagating or extending the idea कि अब पुरानी वाली जो emerging economies थी, या जो emerging economies है, पहले जो cheap labor सप्लाई करता था, ये supplied cheap labor वाली बात दोनों के अंदर सेम है, कोई लोड नहीं उसका. They are now competing with countries to which they earlier supplied cheap labor. This is not talking about them moving up the value chain higher, enabled them to move up the value chain and go global. This is also a important part of the passage, which is entirely being missed in C. Additionally, अब प्रोडक्शन एंड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन बोला है और यहाँ पे सिर्फ बिजनेस मॉडल्स बोला है. ये सी के फेवर में ये बात है, बट competition has driven emerging economies. Extend करके competition, the reason for their innovation or highly improved tendency of operating, उसका भी reason दिया है. Between C, B and C, B is a more comprehensive answer. B still has its own challenges, but B is a more comprehensive answer. My own bias was, हमने business model, production and distribution के बीच में लड़ाई करके C को मार दिया था, जबकि C के अंदर not as many points related to the passage are mentioned as are mentioned in B. Answer B ही होना चाहिए. Yo, that will be all. Those of us who are still around, hopefully we learned something. अलग ही मजे. Stopping the recording now.